The tea is good, but I don't like it. Chu Luiyue glared at him. Your Highness is still in the mood to joke at a time like this? That's exactly what I was thinking. Rong Xiu raised his brows. Also, what do you mean by this time? Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes. The entire imperial city is in a mess, but only this person can leisurely brew tea and play chess in his own backyard. He's really calm. She shook her head and cut to the chase. You already knew that His Majesty was going to do something to the third prince? Previously, Rong Xiu had mentioned that someone wanted to frame Rong Jiao and blame him for the empress's death. However, Chu Luiyue never expected that person to be Emperor Jiawen. No matter what, Rong Jiao is his biological son. His actions are no different from sending Rong Jiao to his death. Rong Xiu's expression didn't change, and his lips curled up into a casual smile. Since you know what's going on, why do you have to ask me? This is an admission. Chu Luiyue knitted his brows and was still confused. But why did His Majesty do this? If he didn't want Rong Jiao to inherit the throne, he had many ways. At the very least, Rong Jiao was trapped in the imperial city and had almost all of his military power confiscated. He couldn't do anything. Besides, Rong Jiao had fought on the battlefield for many years and had many achievements. Even without his identity as a prince, his contributions were still significant. Why must Emperor Jiawen be so ruthless? His Majesty knows that the person who killed the empress is Situ Xingqian. Until now, this news had been tightly sealed. Are you suspecting that father is siding with Situ Xingqian? Asked Rong Xiu with interest. Chu Luiyue shook his head. Judging from the situation that night, Emperor Jiawen definitely didn't want to let Situ Xingqian off. He just wanted to get something from her. However, there's really no need to frame Rong Jiao for the empress's death. She knew very well that the royal family was heartless, and she even had an unforgettable painful memory. However, Emperor Jiawen clearly had other motives for doing this. Rong Xiu smiled lightly. If he knows his place and is an idle prince in the imperial city, father naturally won't do anything to him. He can make father decide to do this. Looking at his meaningful expression, Chu Luiyue suddenly understood something. Your Highness, you mean that the third prince? Rong Xiu placed a chess piece down. Chu Luiyue looked down and his heart skipped a beat. Once this piece was placed, the originally deadlocked black and white chess pieces on the chessboard instantly broke the stalemate. They crazily fought each other. Rong Jiao actually wants to rebel? If not, I really can't think of any other reason for Emperor Jiawen to do this. Your Highness, how did you know? Once Chu Luiyue asked this, he couldn't help but regret it. As long as Rong Xiu wants to, he can know everything. However, Rong Xiu's expression became strange. Chu Luiyue looked at his eyes and suddenly widened her eyes in shock as she thought of something. Could it be? Rong Xiu looked at her with a deep gaze, and his lips suddenly curved up as he waved at her. Come over. Chu Luiyue stood up in confusion and walked over. Rong Xiu held her hand, pulled her into his embrace, and tightly hugged her as he bent down and kissed her. Chu Luiyue was taken aback, and her heart trembled slightly from his scorching aura. What's wrong with this person? Why is he so sudden? Why, Your Highness? Chu Luiyue pushed his shoulders, but he hugged her waist very tightly as if he wanted to embed her in his embrace. Rong Xiu only stopped when he kissed her until her limbs turned weak and she melted into a puddle of spring water in his arms. He then switched to a light kiss. Chu Luiyue looked at him, and her eyes that were as bright as the night sky became moist, as if a pinch would overflow with sweetness. Rong Xiu's eyes flashed and he reached out to cover her eyes. He moved closer to her ear and said in a low and hoarse voice, as if something was rubbing against his heart. Don't look at this prince like that. Chu Luiyue's ears also heated up. Your Highness. You knows this prince best. Rong Xiu suddenly couldn't help but bite her delicate earlobe. Chu Luiyue felt itchy but her body went soft. Rong Xiu buried his face in her neck and closed his eyes. She always knew what he was thinking. From the past to the present. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 438. Chu Luiyue naturally didn't know what Rong Xiu was thinking. His hot breath landed on her neck and behind her ears, making her feel itchy. The breeze blew and the bamboo forest swayed. Chu Luiyue instantly became much more awake. No wonder Rong Xiu kept looking at the entire imperial city's military strength distribution. It turns out that he had long been preparing for this day. Rong Jiao had stayed in the imperial city for a few months and didn't even leave the city. Now that he suddenly decided to rebel, someone was clearly adding fuel to the fire. And this person was Rong Xiu. Your Highness, when did you start planning all this? Chu Luiyue couldn't help but ask. Rong Xiu's low voice sounded by her ear. Oh, it's quite early. When did third brother go to the Northwest Army? His tone was casual and calm, as if this was just a small matter. Chu Luiyue was shocked and pushed him away. She looked back and stared at Rong Xiu in disbelief with her black eyes. Your Highness, you mean, but he didn't ask to go. Chu Luiyue's words stopped abruptly. Suddenly, an extremely absurd idea appeared in her mind. Rong Xiu saw her rare shocked look, and a smile flashed across his eyes. It's not easy to see her reveal such an expression. Seeing his expression, Chu Luiyue opened her mouth, but she didn't say a word. What else do I have to say? He's clearly admitting it. All these years, Rong Xiu's every move was actually under Rong Xiu's control. No matter if it was his determination to join the army after being bullied by the Empress and the Crown Prince, his outstanding military achievements, or his current situation where he had nowhere to go, it was clearly all in Rong Xiu's plan. But, it's dangerous to nurture a tiger. Now Rong Xiu wants to go against Emperor Jiawen, but he'll definitely become Rong Xiu in the end. Chu Luiyue's heart was in turmoil, and she finally couldn't help but ask, did you tell His Majesty that the third prince was going to rebel? Rong Xiu's brows moved slightly. You're underestimating father. Since third imperial brother had done this, how could imperial father not have noticed? I don't have much to do with this matter. I'd be a fool if I believed you. Chu Luiyue cursed in her heart. Perhaps Rong Xiu also had a part to play in Rong Xiu's plan to attack. Third prince doesn't know about this? Rong Xiu raised his brows slightly. What do you think? Chu Luiyue gasped and slapped her forehead. My brain short-circuited too. If Rong Xiu knew it, Rong S's. The Northwest Army's 5,000 elites are about to reach the imperial city. Rong Xiu gently caressed her slender and soft waist as he nonchalantly said, as for when they'll fight, it depends on father and third brother. According to Rong Xiu's personality, they shouldn't wait for long. Besides, father will punish Rong Xiu in the next few days. Chu Luiyue put her hand down, opened her eyes and looked at him. Isn't all of this in your hands, Your Highness? Today, everything is under Rong Xiu's control. Rong Xiu chuckled. If I didn't hear wrongly, are you praising me? Chu Luiyue was speechless. Is the praise more important than the matter itself? Country Yao Chen is about to change. However, Rong Xiu didn't seem to care about it. Looking at her shocked and confused face, Rong Xiu laughed for a while before finally saying, Don't worry. Don't worry, Lord Chuning will be leaving the imperial capital with a group of people today to investigate some matters. If the Imperial Guards and the Northwest Army fight, Lord Chuning won't be implicated. Did he purposely send father away for me? Her conversation with Rong Xiu contained too much joy. Chu Luiyue's mind was filled with thoughts, and she didn't know what to say for a moment. She looked at Rong Xiu with a complicated gaze. This man was devilishly handsome, extremely talented and terrifyingly scheming. But he just had to be so honest with her that she didn't know how to face him. He had plotted for so many years and played such a big game of chess, yet he told her so easily? Your Highness, aren't you worried that I'll tell others about this? Asked Chu Luiyue with knitted brows. Rong Xiu looked at her in shock as if she had asked a very stupid question. Which woman in this world would put the man she loves in danger? Chu Luiyue was speechless. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with this sentence, but why does it sound so strange? Chu Luiyue stuttered, and her usually eloquent tongue seemed to be in a knot at this point. After a while she finally decided to give up and not harp on this matter. However, she still had the strangest and most important question. Your Highness, why are you doing this? One was his father and the other was his brother. In their bones the same blood flowed in their veins. Rong Xiu's actions were equivalent to starting a fight between Emperor Jiawen and Rong Xiu. A war was about to break out. No matter who won or lost in the end, what was the point to Rong Xiu? Rong Xiu thought for a moment and chuckled. Oh, I just felt that it was too troublesome to fight for it, so I found someone to do it for me. Chu Luiyue was dazed. He did it for me? He's talking about fighting for the throne, right? How can he replace something like this? Besides, the most important thing is that if Rong Xiu really wanted the throne, why did he have to pretend to be sick for so many years? According to Emperor Jiawen's love for him, as long as Rong Xiu displayed his true abilities, no, just a small portion of his abilities, Emperor Jiawen would definitely make him the crown prince. Chu Luiyue actually wanted to ask, but for some reason she had a strong feeling that it was best not to ask. Rong Xiu must have his reasons for doing this. After reacting for a while, Chu Luiyue finally found her voice. But if that's the case, won't the throne be the third prince's? A faint smile appeared on Rongxiu's face, but there was an indescribable suppression in his eyes. He slowly said, who do you think helped third brother contact the Northwest Army and made him take the last pill of confidence and decide to mobilize the army? Of course it's my people. Emperor Jiawen gathered all the officials to discuss Rongjiu's punishment. After an intense debate they finally came to a conclusion. The third prince, Rongjiu, has committed treason. He took the chance when Emperor Jiawen asked him to take care of the empress, harmed the empress and tried to destroy the corpse. His crimes are utterly devoid of conscience, and the heavens cannot tolerate it. He will be beheaded at the Meridian Gate. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 439. Early in the morning, the imperial city streets and alleys were filled with people. Whether it was out of curiosity, pity, or some other reason, everyone rushed to the Meridian Gate. The execution ground was tightly guarded by armored imperial guards. Rongjiu had not been brought over, but the surroundings were already filled with people. It was very noisy. This third prince has made great contributions in the Northwest Army a few years ago. He's very impressive. Who would have thought that he would become a prisoner in the blink of an eye? His achievements are enough to intimidate the emperor. He hasn't even stepped out of the imperial city's gates these few months. Isn't it obvious what the higher-ups are thinking? From what I see, the crime is fake and the execution is real. But among the remaining princes, the third prince is the most suitable candidate for the crown prince. Isn't it too heartless to do this? How much do we know about the palace? Anyway, that person is still in his prime. After a few more years, the princes below him will also grow up, right? It's a pity that the third prince's birth mother has already passed away, and he doesn't have a high status. At this time, there's no one who can help him. The crowd discussed fervently, and they had different opinions about this matter. However, everyone knew that everything was already set in stone by now. Time passed bit by bit, and the sun gradually rose to the middle of the sky. Suddenly, the originally noisy crowd quietened down. The crowd split into two sides and a path opened up. Everyone seemed to have sensed something and they all looked over at the same time. A group of people on horses walked over. The person in front was the Si family head, Si Yi. He was clearly here today to supervise the execution. Compared to the past, the current Si Yi looked much more haggard. His cheeks were deeply sunken and his eyes were bloodshot. It was obvious that the things that happened during this period of time had a big impact on him. After all, the Empress Si Huijing was his biological sister. He had just finished the Empress's funeral, and he had to come here immediately after. He didn't even have time to rest. Si Yi walked forward step by step. He could clearly feel the countless gazes around him landing on his body. But in actual fact his body and mind were numb. Originally he didn't want to come, but His Majesty had given the order, so he could only follow it. A prison wagon slowly followed behind him. The disheveled man in the metal cage was the current third prince, Rongjiu, who was wearing a prisoner's uniform and had his hands locked. He was forced to kneel there with his head slightly lowered. His messy hair fell down and covered most of his face. However, everyone could still vaguely see his current expression. Indifferent and cold. His body even carried a valiant aura that could only be obtained after experiencing life and death on the battlefield. In short, there was no trace of panic or despair. Around the prison cart, there were also imperial guards following closely. However, all those people combined couldn't even compare to Rongjiu's aura. Probably affected by some kind of emotion, the places where the prisoner carriage passed by became incomparably quiet. The people standing in front of him even unconsciously took a step back. This third highness, for some reason, looked a bit inexplicably scary. When they arrived at the execution ground, Si Yi raised his hand and the prison cart finally stopped. "Bring him here." With an order, the imperial guards at the side immediately went forward and brought Rongjiu out of the metal cage. Two extremely sharp swords were pressed against Rongjiu's neck as they brought him to the execution ground in the middle. From start to end, Rongjiu's expression didn't change much. But when he stood still at the execution ground, he suddenly looked up and glanced in the direction of the palace as mockery flashed across his eyes. It seems like father won't change his decision. Today he was determined to put him to death. Rongjiu retracted his gaze and looked down to hide the murderous intent in his eyes. Unless it was his last resort, he actually didn't want to do this. However, he had been on the battlefield for many years and had experienced countless life and death situations. He didn't expect that he would end up with such an outcome. Anyone would feel hopeless if they were in his shoes. "Hurry up and kneel." yelled the person behind Rongjio impatiently as he harshly kicked Rongjio's knees. However, Rongjio didn't kneel down from the kick. His physical body was as hard as a piece of steel. Seeing that Rongjio didn't kneel down as he wanted, the man who kicked him was shocked. Rongjio slowly turned around and glanced at him. The man immediately felt guilty under her gaze, and an inexplicable trace of fear appeared in his heart. Then he frowned and hollered, "What? What are you looking at? Do you think you're the high and mighty third prince? He's just a criminal on death row, yet he's still so arrogant when he's about to die. Kneel down." That man gave the person beside him a look, and the two of them exerted their strength. The two long swords instantly slit Rongjio's neck, and red blood slowly seeped out. The last bit of hesitation in Rongjio's heart finally disappeared. He slightly bent his knees as if he was really going to kneel down. However, in the next moment his body suddenly leaped up and kicked the two people closest to him. His actions were too fast, and the two of them didn't even have time to react before they were harshly kicked away by Rongjio. Siyi immediately realized something and hollered, "Capture! Capture him! Rongjio actually wants to escape." The surrounding crowd also reacted at this point and rushed forward. An enormous figure suddenly appeared above Rongjio's head. Siyi looked over and was shocked. It was a fourth-grade fiend, a white-thatched falcon. Wah! That white-thatched falcon suddenly spread its wings. Rongjio flipped over and jumped onto it. "Go!" Following a clear cry, the white-thatched falcon flapped its wings and flew into the sky. At this point, the surrounding crowd finally understood that it was Rongjio's fiend. When he was locked up in the prison, he didn't have anything else on him other than his prison clothes. But they actually forgot that he had his own fiend. Rongjio had been very low profile these few months in the Imperial City, so they actually forgot that he had such a trump card. Even though this white-thatched falcon was a fourth-grade fiend, it was ferocious and had strong combat skills. It was almost considered the top among the fourth-grade fiends. The human and fiend's figures quickly flew into the distance. Siyi immediately said, "Prepare. Prepare your bows." The many Imperial guards immediately took out the bows on their backs and aimed at Rongjio in midair. However, right at this moment, a few figures suddenly charged out from the crowd, and they charged towards the Imperial guards. Choo-choo. Messy air-piercing sounds were heard, and many of them deviated from their original directions. They didn't even touch the edges of the white-thatched falcon's wings. Siyi looked at the people who suddenly rushed over in shock and anger, and he suddenly widened his eyes in shock. They actually took the initiative to use their killer move. They came prepared. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 440. The crowd instantly fell into chaos. Those people were wearing very normal clothes, and they looked no different from the commoners who were here to join in the fun. It was precisely because of this that their actions were especially sudden. Siyi roughly glanced at them, and there were at least hundreds of them. These people were clearly here for Rongjio. More importantly, from the ruthless moves of these people, it was obvious that they were trained on the battlefield. Siyi suddenly understood something and gasped. Rongjio actually mobilized the Northwest Army to save me? Didn't they say that he handed over his military power after returning to the Imperial City and didn't contact the Northwest Army again? What exactly is going on with these people's appearance? In just an instant, screams, weapons clashing, and the sound of sharp weapons piercing into flesh were all mixed together. Countless people screamed and escaped. Siyi was about to chase after Rongjio when two people suddenly rushed over from the side and directly blocked his path. The next moment they actually attacked before Siyi did. Siyi was forced into a chaotic battle. The two parties had just exchanged a few moves and he knew that things were bad. These people all killed their way out of a pile of corpses. Even if their cultivation levels weren't as high as his, they were the best at killing people. Once they attacked, every move was fatal. There were no tricks at all. In the midst of the chaos, Siyi looked around and realized that things were exactly as he had expected. The Imperial Guards, who had the advantage in numbers, were gradually at a disadvantage. He flung something out of his sleeves without hesitation. Bang! A signal shot up to the sky. At the same time, Emperor Jiawen was reading something alone in the Imperial study. But after taking 2 glances, he stopped and rubbed his glabella. Calculating the time, it should be about time. Suddenly, Eunuch Min's anxious voice was heard from outside the door. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Something happened." Emperor Jiawen's heart skipped a beat as he walked over and personally opened the door. He frowned and asked, "What exactly happened?" Eunuch Min was shocked as he hurriedly took a step back and knelt down. Your Majesty, the third prince ran away. Emperor Jiawen's expression turned even colder. What do you mean he ran away? What is Siyi doing? Where are the imperial guards? Eunuch Min wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead and quickly said in a trembling voice, "That's right. Your Majesty, someone has blended into the crowd and started fighting with the imperial guards. They escorted the third prince away." The ominous feeling in Emperor Jiawen's heart intensified. This is the imperial capital. Who would help him like this? They seem to be the Northwest Army. Bang. Emperor Jiawen kicked Eunuch Min's heart. Trash. Eunuch Min fell to the ground with a dull pain in his chest. He spat out a mouthful of blood. However, Emperor Jiawen had already strode outside. Send more men immediately. Seal the city gates. Not only Rongjio, but we can't let anyone related to this incident go. Eunuch Min endured the pain and hurriedly followed. Yes. Emperor Jiawen's face darkened. As expected, Rongjio had already secretly contacted the Northwest Army. He had even made such preparations. He planned to escape from the execution ground. Previously, there were even people who wanted to make him the crown prince. What a joke. Rongjio was very ambitious. How could he be willing to be a prince with no real power? Once he became the crown prince, he might not be able to sit on the throne. Emperor Jiawen was walking forward when someone hurriedly rushed over and directly knelt in front of him. Your Majesty. Upon seeing this person, Emperor Jiawen's expression changed. If it weren't for something major, this person definitely wouldn't have appeared here. As expected, that person's next sentence made him feel like he was struck by lightning. Wei Lin led the Northwest Army soldiers here, and they're already 20 miles away from the imperial capital's gate. They said that the third prince had contributed greatly to the country of Yao Qin and had always been loyal to you. Now you're listening to the slanderous words of a villain and want to execute him. This really hurt the hearts of countless soldiers guarding the borders. So, they're here to ask you to clear the third prince's name. Emperor Jiawen's figure swayed. Northwest Army's Wei Lin, aren't they Rongjio's men? How is this clearing Rongjio's name? They're clearly rebelling. This place is thousands of miles away from the borders, and it takes at least 3 to 4 days for a message to travel back and forth. However, the imperial edict to kill Rongjio was only issued yesterday. These people came so quickly, which means that they arrived long ago. Now they actually have the cheek to accuse me? Eunuch Min hurriedly went forward to support Emperor Jiawen, but Emperor Jiawen flung him away. The next moment, Emperor Jiawen harshly slapped the person kneeling in front of him. That man's face was instantly slapped to the side. His cheeks rapidly swelled up. However, he immediately bowed and kowtowed. Your Majesty, please calm down. It's all my fault. You actually only discovered such an important matter now? What use do I have for you? Emperor Jiawen's hand was completely numb from the slap, but his chest was still filled with anger and his face was green. Your Majesty, those people seem to have come in batches. They only gathered again after all of them arrived. That's why I didn't discover them in time. What kind of place is the imperial capital? We're in charge of guarding the city gates, so how dare we slack off? However, those people from the Northwest Army are too sneaky. We didn't even realize it previously. When we realized that something was amiss, it was already too late. How many people did they send? Asked Emperor Jiawen as he took a deep breath. Around 5,000. Emperor Jiawen panted. 5,000 imperial guards are nothing to worry about. Where's Chuning? Get him to bring people over immediately. Your Majesty, did you forget that you just sent Lord Chuning out of the city yesterday? Reminded Eunuch Min carefully. Emperor Jiawen was dazed. He then remembered that he seemed to have found some news related to the bronze vat outside the imperial capital, so he had already sent Chuning to investigate. They weren't even in the imperial capital now. Let Xiaoming take over. And you? Immediately gather the imperial guards. You must stop them outside the imperial capital's gates. There are more than 10,000 imperial guards, so it shouldn't be a problem to deal with 5,000 people. The man kneeling on the floor seemed to have seen through Emperor Jiawen's thoughts as he braced himself. Your Majesty, the imperial guards are scattered all over the imperial capital. It's already difficult to gather them immediately. The most important thing is that the people who came seem to be the Northwest Army's elites. It's not that I'm afraid, but I know too well how troublesome this situation is. How could a person who could survive on the battlefield be compared to these pampered imperial guards in the imperial capital? If there's no other way, the city gates will fall in no time. Digression. The plot is stuck and it's very difficult to write. I'll go back and sort out the plot. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from my Yuan. Chapter 441. It was early winter in the imperial city, and the wind was biting cold. Outside the city gates, the soldiers from both sides were in a standoff. Time passed bit by bit and the afterglow shone down. Outside the city gates, 5,000 elites stood in formation, filled with a strong murderous aura. After looking at them for a long time, one could almost smell the sand and blood mixed in the air. The imperial guards on the city walls were fully armed. A tall man dressed in black armor stood in the middle of the group. This person was the deputy commander of the imperial guards, Zhao Ming. Chu Ning was not around, so he took on the task at the last moment and became the commander of the imperial guards. His eyes were fixed on the front as he shouted in a deep voice. "Where is the Northwest Army's deputy general, Wei Lin?" His low and powerful voice instantly spread far and wide. A man in red armor took a step forward. "I'm here." It was an extremely muscular man who looked no more than 30 years old. He had a beard on his face and looked very fierce. Zhao Ming took a deep breath. Wei Lin was very famous in the Northwest Army. He was violent and strong. Moreover, he was a stage 5 warrior who fought his way out on the battlefield. Just by himself he could take on 100 people by himself. Not to mention the thousands of soldiers behind him, who were obviously not easy to deal with. Rong Jiao was fully prepared this time. According to Yao Chen's laws, the deputy general can't leave the army without His Majesty's orders. He can't bring soldiers into the imperial city. "Wei Lin, are you rebelling?" Wei Lin laughed. "Zhao Ming, it's fine if you're not strong enough, but it turns out that your brain is useless too. I've already said that this is not a rebellion. It's just that His Majesty's actions toward the third prince are unreasonable. He even hurt the hearts of the Northwest Army soldiers. We're only here to help His Highness the third prince and to seek justice for ourselves." Zhao Ming was about to retort when he suddenly saw a commotion in the crowd opposite him. Then it suddenly split in the middle. A man walked out from the middle. He was wearing armor and his face was solemn and majestic. It was Rong Jiao. Zhao Ming's heart sank. Rong Jiao indeed successfully escaped. After the riot at the execution ground, the imperial guards were collectively mobilized to search for Rong Jiao's whereabouts in the entire imperial city. However, they did not find anything until he arrived. It turned out that Rong Jiao had already left the imperial city during the chaos. At this time, the prison clothes and shackles on his body were long gone. He was dressed in martial attire and looked bloody and fierce. "Greetings, Your Highness." Wei Lin cupped his fists and bowed. The soldiers behind him immediately shouted in unison. "Welcome back, Your Highness." Their shouts shook the heavens. Rong Jiao raised his palm and immediately suppressed the voice. When Zhao Ming and the other imperial guards saw this scene, they were all shocked. The fact that Rong Jiao could do this was enough to show his prestige in the military. No wonder he dared to do this. Rong Jiao looked at Zhao Ming expressionlessly. "Zhao Ming, I don't want to hurt the innocent, so I'll give you a chance. Open the city gate. Otherwise, don't blame I for being merciless." How could Zhao Ming do it? "Your Highness, doing such a rebellious thing, in the end he would be spurned by the world. I advise you to repent and be saved. Return with me now and apologize to His Majesty." Rong Jiao sneered. "I have already been labeled as a rebellious person. Since that's the case, I might as well fulfill this label." A trace of uneasiness surged in Zhao Ming's heart. "I joined the army when I was 14 years old and fought on the battlefield for many years, killing countless enemies. There are a total of 23 scars on my body and every one of them is fatal. I have made great contributions to country Yao Chen, but in the end, all I received was a prison uniform and countless crimes." If he admitted it, how could he be reconciled? Apologize. The person sitting on the dragon throne now did not have the qualifications to order him around from a high position. Zhao Ming said in a deep voice. "Your Highness, you..." Before he could finish speaking, he saw Rong Jiao raise his hand high. Then it fell harshly. "The first person to break the city gate today will be promoted by 3 levels. 1,000 taels of gold." A low and powerful voice instantly sounded. The countless Northwest Army soldiers behind him instantly became excited. They raised their arms and shouted in unison. "Kill! Kill! Kill!" Wei Lin looked up and laughed. "Ha ha! Brats, didn't you hear what His Highness said? This time I won't go easy on you. The city gate. Let me take it." Then Wei Lin's figure instantly rushed out. When one person moved, 1,000 people followed. Seeing Wei Lin go straight to the city gate, the people behind him followed one after another. Rong Jiao suddenly pulled out the padao that he always carried with him. The sound of the padao rang out. The wind howled. The next moment he tipped his toes and personally attacked. Today he would return all the humiliation and torture that he had suffered in the imperial city. Zhao Ming immediately said, "Release the arrows." The imperial guards hidden behind the battlements of the city wall drew their bows in unison. Countless black iron arrows pierced through the air. The two sides were completely engaged in a battle. When the city gate was in a tense situation, the imperial city was also in chaos. Even though a portion of the imperial guards were responsible for guarding, the people's hearts were in chaos. The streets and alleys were in a mess and almost no one appeared. Everyone was hiding in their own homes. After Rong Jin was removed from his position, everyone thought that Rong Jiao would naturally be made the new crown prince. Who knew that not only did he not become the crown prince, but he even directly started a rebellion. However, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Rong Jiao had long made preparations. If not, he wouldn't be able to gather the Northwest Army in such a short period of time. For a moment, the crowd couldn't tell if Emperor Jiawen let Rong Jiao down first or if Rong Jiao started the rebellion first. However, Chu Luiyue didn't have time to care about all this at this point. This was because Mu Qinghe personally came to her residence. In the room, Chu Luiyue slightly widened her eyes. What? Leave now? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 442. Is there a problem? Asked Mu Qinghe coldly as she knitted her brows. The other side kept urging him to go back, and he couldn't delay any longer. Besides, the injuries he suffered in the Imperial Mausoleum had mostly healed over the past 2 days. Now was the best time to go back. That's not it. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment. It's just that the Imperial City situation is a little special. Won't it seem strange if we leave now? The Northwest Army led by Rong Jiao has already started fighting with the Imperial Guards. It doesn't make sense for us to leave at this time. Besides, I already know that all of this is Rong Xiu's plan. How can I leave without seeing the results? Mu Qinghe lightly asked in return. Even if they start fighting, what does it have to do with us leaving? It's just a small fight. This small country Yaoqian isn't even as big as a state under me. Chu Luiyue instantly had the urge to facepalm. A small fight? The deaths of thousands of people and a country's political power were just a small fight in Mu Qinghe's eyes. However, with his status, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with saying this. The battles that Mu Qinghe had experienced were indeed much more dangerous and scary than this. No, Vice Admiral Mu. I think you've misunderstood me. Chu Luiyue deliberated before speaking. I'm Prince Li's fiancé, so I'm considered part of the royal family. Now that something like this has happened, how can I just leave? At the very least, I have to wait until everything is settled. Mu Qinghe's expression turned even colder. Time is limited. Leave or stay. Choose one. Chu Luiyue was in a dilemma. I must go to the Tianling dynasty. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If I follow Mu Qinghe back, not only will I be able to do it openly, but I can also hide my identity better. Moreover, it was very likely that they would directly come into contact with Jiang Yuqing and the others. Without this layer of relationship, even if she broke through to the 7th stage, entered the Heaven's Canopy and returned to the Tianling dynasty, the situation might not be better than now. But if he left now, what would happen to Rong Xiu? What about father? She wasn't worried that they wouldn't be able to protect her, but she hadn't explained anything yet. If she left with Mu Qinghe now, it would definitely cause a lot of trouble. Who knew when he would be able to come back after this trip? Or would he never come back? Chu Luiyue pursed his lips tightly and didn't say anything for a while. Mu Qinghe, it's been so many years. Why don't you have any tender feelings for the fairer sex? A mocking and casual voice was heard. Chu Luiyue looked up and saw Jian Fengqi. As he walked over, he smiled and said, Prince Li and Miss Chu just got engaged. They haven't even held their wedding ceremony yet. If you ask her to go back with you now, wouldn't you be breaking up the couple? It's so far away. It'll be difficult for the couple to see each other in the future. Mu Qinghe turned his face and looked at him expressionlessly. Jian Fengqi shrugged his shoulders. Not only did he not stop, but he even walked to Mu Qinghe's side and placed his arm on the latter's shoulder as he smiled charmingly. Anyway, the deadline has passed. The others who should go back have already gone back. It's too late for you to set off now. Why are you nervous for a day or two? In my opinion, why don't you do me a favor? Hey. Just talk. Why do you have to hit me? Jian Fengqi quickly broke free from Mu Qinghe's grip. He rubbed his wrist that was almost hit and took a few steps back. Fine. Anyway, it's your business. No one else can do anything about it, right? It'll be fine if I don't say anything? Chu Luiyue was speechless. Jian Fengqi was a head taller than Mu Qinghe. He also looked tall and strong. Why was he so scared? Looking at this scene from the side, it was really strange. However, she quickly focused on some words in Jian Fengqi's sentence. Deadline? Could it be that there was a time limit for Mu Qinghe's trip this time? And why were there other people? It sounded like many people were going out at the same time to complete a mission. Could it be that they were going to find a cultivator with a Daijing Yuan meridian? Chu Luiyue vaguely felt that something was not right. But looking at Mu Qinghe, it was obvious that he would not reveal anything. Mu Qinghe's expression was cold. I have to go back today. Jian Fengqi's expression changed slightly. Because his back was facing Chu Luiyue did not see the change in his expression. But soon, Jian Fengqi's eyes regained their calmness. He crossed his arms, rubbed his chin, and asked tentatively, "Why don't you go back first? Why don't you go back first? Once this matter is settled, this young master will personally escort her back." As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Qinghe immediately said, "No. Why not? Isn't this a very good suggestion?" Jian Fengqi paused and looked meaningfully at Mu Qinghe. "You're busy. You're just wasting time here. Since I'm free, why don't I look after her for a few days? With me around, do you think I'll let her be late?" Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Late? Was Mu Qinghe looking for her because he was in a hurry to go back? Miss Chu doesn't want to go back now. Isn't it too heartless of you to take her away by force? Jian Fengqi returned to his usual playful tone. But it was clear that he was serious about this proposal. Mu Qinghe's eyes flashed with a hint of contemplation. After a moment he finally said, 3 days at most. No problem. Jian Fengqi immediately agreed. Then he suddenly thought of something and turned to look at Chu Luiyue. 3 days should be enough, right? Chu Luiyue gently nodded. Thank you, Vice Admiral Mu, young Master Jian. She had a premonition that this battle would come to a conclusion in 3 days. What she needed to do was to make use of these 3 days to arrange everything properly. Mu Qinghe glanced at Chu Luiyue. With a wave of his wrist, something flew out from his sleeve. Chu Luiyue immediately caught it and looked down. This is my token. Take this and someone will bring you to me when the time comes. Then he didn't say anything else. With a thought, a long sword flew out and floated in front of him. With a leap, Mu Qinghe turned around and left on his sword. He was very fast and he disappeared from Chu Luiyue's sight in the blink of an eye. Chu Luiyue knitted his brows. Young Master Jian, did Vice Admiral Mu go back? Jian Fengqi retracted his gaze, and the emotions in his eyes quickly disappeared. He then changed into his usual carefree smile. He has things to do, so you don't have to worry about him. You, on the other hand, just let me know when you're ready. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up. Thank you, young Master Jian. Jian Fengqi's smile deepened. Oh right, I heard that Emperor Jiawen seems to be looking for a bronze cauldron these few days. Is that true? Chapter 443. Chu Luiyue's eyebrows twitched. It seemed that Jian Fengqi hadn't been idle during his stay in the capital. He even knew about this. However, his strength was tyrannical. If he really wanted to investigate something, it was likely that not many people could stop him. Thus, Chu Luiyue quickly weighed the pros and cons in his heart and nodded honestly. Young Master Jian is well informed. Jian Fengqi raised his eyebrows and smiled ambiguously. It's a coincidence. I only found out about this by accident. It was on the day that the item was taken away. Chu Luiyue's expression instantly froze. Young Master Jian knows who stole the bronze cauldron? Jian Fengqi's icy eyes flashed with a ripple of light. I said it earlier. I just happened to see it. Of course, that person's face was covered, so I didn't see it clearly. That meant that he really saw it. And it was actually a person. To be able to kill all the guards inside and outside Heptagon Alley in a very short period of time without even giving them the chance to ask for help, it was enough to show that the person must be a top expert. One must know that there were many rank 4 warriors among them. An ordinary rank 5 warrior would never be able to do this. Chu Luiyue looked around vigilantly and lowered his voice. I wonder if young Master Jian can tell me in detail what that person looked like? I can only confirm that it was a man and a rank 6 warrior. As for the rest, I'm not sure. Then did you see where that person went with the bronze cauldron? This. Jian Fengqi paused for a moment and shrugged. I was just surprised that there was another rank 6 warrior here, so I took a second look. Who would care about that bronze cauldron? At that time he didn't know that it was so important. By the time he saw some clues, the other party had already disappeared. Chu Luiyue could see that he was telling the truth and could only sigh helplessly. Anyway, thank you. Speaking of which, this matter had nothing to do with Jian Fengqi, so it was normal that he didn't care. However, if you really want to find that person, it's not like I can't help you. Chu Luiyue was taken aback. Didn't you say that you didn't see clearly before? Jian Fengqi smiled wickedly. It seems that young Miss Chu doesn't remember what I do? Celestial physician, celestial physician. You left something on that person? Jian Fengqi knocked her head with his finger. Smart. Chu Luiyue, if it was in the past he wouldn't have dared to be so impudent in front of her. But now it wasn't the time. Why do you want me to help you? In any case you still have 3 days. You have nothing to do anyway. Seeing Jian Fengqi's expression, Chu Luiyue squinted her eyes. This person was still the same as before, eager to see the world in chaos. How was this helping her? He clearly wanted to join in the fun and watch her make a fool of herself. Chu Luiyue's lips slowly curved into an extremely sincere smile. Of course. I'll have to trouble you with this matter, young Master Jian. When this matter is over, Luyu will definitely reward you handsomely. Jian Fengqi inexplicably shuddered. Chu Luiyue, when she smiled, it was exactly the same as that person's. Every time he saw her smile like that, he felt that disaster was about to befall him. He didn't expect that even though that person was already dead, he still subconsciously felt awe when he saw that similar expression. Tiske. This psychological trauma was really too great. Fine. I'll help you. Jian Fengqi hurriedly looked away and took 2 steps back, sizing up Chu Luiyue. In fact, overall, whether it was their facial features or body shape, they didn't look very similar. However, he didn't know why, but when he looked at Chu Luiyue he would think of that person from time to time. He didn't believe that Mu Qinghe didn't have such misconceptions. If you really go there. Jian Fengqi suddenly thought of something and muttered in a low voice. Chu Luiyue didn't seem to understand his expression and asked gently, "Where are we going?" Jian Fengqi pointed in the direction Mu Qinghe left. Do you still remember this young master saying that you somewhat resemble an old friend? Chu Luiyue nodded. If they see you they will definitely be very surprised. Jian Fengqi smiled brightly. He wasn't the only one who had such a psychological trauma. There was nothing to be ashamed of. But Jiang Yuqing and those people, he really didn't know how they would react when they saw Chu Luiyue. It would definitely be very exciting. Thinking of that scene, Jian Fengqi felt that his entire body was healed. Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Since you're in such a hurry, I'll help you find him now. Then he took out a small bell. That bell was only the size of a thumb, and it was carved out of blue-green peacock stone. Through the hollow gap, one could see that there seemed to be something gently knocking against the bell, which made a crisp sound. Jian Fengqi focused on listening for a while, and a surprised expression appeared on his face as he looked at Chu Luiyue. That person is still in the Imperial City. The atmosphere in the palace was even more tense than outside. In a dark dungeon somewhere, Situ Xingqian was locked up again. Blessing Palace had already been burned down, and she was locked up somewhere else this time. However, Emperor Jiawen specially ordered for more manpower. For 24 hours a day, there were always people guarding within 10 steps of Situ Xingqian, and they guarded her closely. One of Situ Xingqian's arms and legs were crippled, so she could only lie on the floor pathetically. She fainted and woke up a few times. Every time, she hoped that she would be in a different place when she opened her eyes. But no. Her heart was filled with despair. Even Elder Zhong Yi couldn't save me, let alone the others. I don't know what's going on with father, but there's still no news. I really didn't expect the third prince to really start a rebellion. I wonder if he'll fight his way to the palace. A worried voice could be heard. Situ Xingqian paused and realized that the few people in charge of guarding at the side were softly discussing something. Yeah. No wonder His Majesty was so wary of him previously and even sentenced him to death. It turns out that he already expected this day to come. So what? Didn't he still escape from the execution ground? I heard that there's already a fight outside the city gates. The Northwest Army's people don't care about their lives. They came prepared. From what I see, they have a high chance of winning. That might not be the case. Other than the Imperial Guards in the Imperial City, there are also the elites from the various aristocratic families. How can it be broken so easily? It's a pity that we have to continue guarding here. If not, we can also find a chance to, Before that person could finish his sentence, he suddenly let out a short scream. The remaining people did not even have time to react before their lives were harvested. Situ Xingqian immediately looked up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 444. A man in a long black robe appeared in front of her. The other party was wearing a black and red ghost mask, which almost covered his entire face. She could only see a pair of cold and indifferent brown eyes. He stood there, and his entire body was enveloped in an extremely strong suppression. The few people who were still talking previously were all on the floor, motionless and completely dead. The thick smell of blood filled the air. Situ Xingqian held her breath, and her hair stood on end. This man is very dangerous. Who are you? She instinctively touched her wrist, but she felt nothing. She then remembered that the bracelet had already been destroyed by Yi Zhiding. Now she had nothing on her that could be used to attack or defend. That man suddenly laughed and his voice was hoarse. You don't need to know who I am. You just need to know that I'm here to help you. Help me? Situ Xingqian knitted her brows. Who exactly are you? Why are you helping me? She was originally very suspicious, and her experiences over the past few days had almost tortured her to insanity. Hence, when she heard this, she was not happy at all. Instead, she felt even more uneasy. That man did not say anything as he waved his sleeves, and a green glow flashed across. A bronze cauldron appeared in front of Situ Xingqian. At the edge, there were still blood stains that had long since dried up. Situ Xingqian took a closer look and her eyes shrunk. This is clearly the bronze cauldron in Heptagon Alley. But didn't I lose this thing previously? Why is it in this unfamiliar man's hands? Besides, he actually brought it over. What exactly do you want to do? It took Situ Xingqian a long time to find her voice. After a short silence, that man finally spoke. Don't you know very well what you should do? Situ Xingqian clenched her fists in her sleeves tightly. You, don't say that you don't know. I know very well what you want to do. This thing was originally prepared for Rong Jin, but it's a pity that that idiot still doesn't know what it is. Hence, this belongs to you now. You really want to give this to me? No. It seems like you're not very willing. As the man spoke, he was about to move as if he was planning to retrieve the bronze cauldron. Situ Xingqian immediately shouted. Wait. She endured the pain in her body and limped over. She stared at the bronze vat for a while. What are your conditions? She didn't believe that he would help her for no reason. When the time is right, you will naturally know. The man seemed to be too lazy to pay attention to her and replied impatiently. Situ Xingqian did not dare to ask further as she slowly touched the bronze cauldron. However, just as she was about to touch him, she suddenly stopped and looked at her hand with resentment. It was withered and purplish, looking extremely terrifying. Other external wounds and even internal injuries could be healed in the end. However, the poison that entered the body was not that easy to remove. The more time passed, the more they accumulated. What if she couldn't return to normal after she got out? What should she do? I have a request. Situ Xingqian mustered her courage and asked. My physical body is seriously injured and I've been poisoned. I wonder if you can help me? The man's gaze landed on her hands. Situ Xingqian looked at him nervously. However, the man's tone was nonchalant. No. Then he turned around and left. Situ Xingqian opened her mouth, but before she could say anything, the man's back view had already disappeared. She gritted her teeth. That person is very strong and his background is definitely not ordinary. How can he not do anything about the poison in my body? He just doesn't want to help. Situ Xingqian suppressed her resentment and looked at the bronze cauldron again. The surroundings were dark, and the bloodstains at the edges gave off a strange and eerie aura when one looked at them for a long time. Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in and placed her hands on the bronze cauldron. The moment she touched it, the remaining bloodstains on her hands were instantly absorbed by the bronze cauldron. A strange, blood-red glow shot out from within and completely enveloped Situ Xingqian. Chu Liyue followed Jian Fengqi all the way. When Chu Liyue realized that Jian Fengqi was also heading toward the palace, she finally knitted her brows and stopped. Jian Fengqi turned around and looked at her in confusion. What's wrong? Chu Liyue glanced at the bell in his hands. This is Jian Fengqi's treasure and it almost never makes a mistake. Young Master Jian, that's the palace. Will that person still stay in the palace after stealing that thing? Jian Fengqi squinted his eyes. Do you not believe me? That's not it. Chu Liyue paused. Just follow me. Don't worry. Since I promised to help you, I'll definitely help you until the end. Upon hearing Jian Fengqi's words, Chu Liyue felt more at ease and continued to follow him. But when the two of them reached the palace walls and were about to think of a way to enter, Jian Fengqi suddenly raised his brows, placed the bell by his ear and listened carefully. Immediately his expression changed. He doesn't seem to be here anymore. What? Chu Luiyue looked around. At this time no one had passed by this place. Wasn't he here just now? How could he be over there? Jian Fengqi quickly turned around. Chu Luiyue naturally followed without hesitation. But after taking 2 steps she couldn't help but look back and her eyes darkened. After Jian Fengqi had walked for some distance, he realized that Chu Luiyue was actually standing there, motionless. Don't you want to track that person down? Jian Fengqi teased. Chu Luiyue shook her head. Then she slowly said, why did that person first come to the palace and then leave? Jian Fengqi paused for a moment, then suddenly understood. You're saying that he purposely came to the palace? Chu Luiyue looked up and carefully stared at the tall palace walls as if she wanted to see through the walls and see everything that was happening inside. After a moment she finally made up her mind. I want to make a trip to the palace. I have a strong feeling in my heart that that man must have a motive for coming this time. In the palace, the only person closely related to the bronze cauldron is Emperor Jiawen. Said Xingqian. But just as Chu Luiyue was about to think of a way to enter, she was pulled back by Jian Fengqi. You're going in broad daylight? Chu Luiyue knitted her brows and was about to say something when she suddenly saw a firework appear in the faraway sky. The next moment it suddenly exploded. Bang! A fluttering military flag suddenly bloomed. Chu Luiyue's heart sank. The city gate has been broken. Digression. Later there is another update for mobile users. Please browse and read a better reading experience from the Love Network. The third prince has already led thousands of rebel soldiers into the imperial capital. The imperial capital was backed by a mountain range, making it easy to defend and difficult to attack. The only way to break through was from the direction of the city gate. But now, Rongjiu actually took such a short time to bring people in. First they broke through the city gate. Soon they would break through the palace gate. Everyone in the hall looked at Emperor Jiawen, and the surroundings were silent. Emperor Jiawen was furious. Useless. The number of imperial guards is almost twice that of the rebel soldiers. How did this happen? The person who came to report could only speak with a trembling voice. Your Majesty, they seem to be very familiar with the imperial capital's military arrangements. That's why Officer Zhao Ming and the rest couldn't. The crowd looked at each other. The imperial capital's military arrangements were top secret, and not many people knew about it. How did Rongjiu get his hands on it? Digression. Tomorrow at 6:00 p.m., please browse for a better reading experience from IUN. Chapter 446. Also, many aristocratic families in the imperial city seem to have submitted to the third prince. That person continued stuttering. Emperor Jiawen froze on the spot as if he was struck by lightning. What do you mean? That person boldly looked up and scanned the surroundings before quickly looking down. Those aristocratic families' heads seemed to have discussed this with the third prince. After the rebel army entered the imperial city, they didn't meet with any obstructions. Actually, Emperor Jiawen understood the meaning of this the moment he heard this. However, he felt that it was too ridiculous. As a result, he subconsciously didn't dare to believe it. There was dead silence in the palace. Emperor Jiawen's vision turned black. How is that possible? I single-handedly supported all these aristocratic families. I definitely won't. Halfway through his sentence, he suddenly thought of something and suddenly looked at the crowd standing in the palace. Someone among you has long betrayed me? One had to know that most of the aristocratic families' heads in the imperial city were standing here. If Rongjiu brought the soldiers in without any obstructions, it meant that someone had instructed him to do so. What responded to him was even scarier silence. It's you? Or you? Or all of you? Emperor Jiawen didn't expect the situation to change so drastically. No wonder Rongjiu was so presumptuous. It turned out that he was fully prepared. So many people secretly betrayed him, but he didn't know it all. Who exactly is it? Emperor Jiawen suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Your Majesty, calm down first. I guarantee with my life that the Si family didn't betray you. Si Yi stepped forward and said solemnly. Previously, when Rongjiu escaped from the execution ground, he couldn't find him for a long time. When he heard that Rongjiu had successfully reached the city gates, he returned to the palace to ask for forgiveness. He didn't expect things to become like this in such a short time. Your Majesty, the same goes for the Chu family. Chu Shao hurriedly said to express his loyalty. Ever since he was harshly scolded in the imperial study, Chu Shao never came again. Today he finally had the chance, so he naturally had to suck up to the emperor. Then a few people spoke up one after another. However, the Gu family and the Lu family of the four major families didn't say anything. Emperor Jiawen was so angry that his entire body trembled. Did the remaining people who didn't say anything already submit to that bastard? Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded from outside the hall. Imperial Father, haven't you already seen the situation clearly? Why bother to get to the bottom of this? It would only make his face even uglier. Emperor Jiawen suddenly looked up and saw a team of soldiers rapidly approaching the palace. Then they separated into two sides. A murderous figure walked out from within. It was Rongjio. Not long ago he was still dressed in prison clothes, battered and exhausted, waiting for the guillotine to fall. But now he was clad in armor, leading his soldiers in an aggressive manner. Finally he stood outside the main hall. He looked at Emperor Jiawen fixedly. Imperial Father, how have you been? Fear finally surfaced in Emperor Jiawen's heart. Men, protect the Emperor. Chu Xiao immediately led the others and rushed forward. But before she could stabilize herself, she heard Rongjio lightly say, "Don't worry. I do not wish to implicate the innocent. As long as you surrender now, I guarantee that I will not touch your family members." Chu Xiao immediately shouted loudly, "Let's go. This is treason. It was a serious crime. His Majesty is the only emperor. Rongjio, you're only digging your own grave by doing this." "Oh? Really?" Rongjio raised the padao in his hands and slowly wiped away the blood stain on it. "First Elder Chu, you probably don't know that the entire imperial city is under I's control, right?" Chu Xiao's heart skipped a beat as he looked at Rongjio and felt uneasy. Could it be that Rongjio will really win this time? At the side, Siyi coldly said, "Rongjio? Rongjio, you killed the Empress and want to rebel now. You deserve to be killed." As he spoke, his body's force surged and he planned to take action. Rongjio chuckled. "I do hate the Empress, but the one who killed her is someone else." Siyi was dazed. "You're lying." His Majesty said it himself, and he had also investigated in private. The guards outside the Empress's palace that day all pointed to Rongjio killing the Empress. How could someone else do it? "I have already brought the soldiers here. What's there to lie about?" Rongjio looked at Siyi sarcastically. "You should ask Father about the truth of the matter." Siyi was dazed. Rongjio does make sense. He even started a rebellion, so why wouldn't he admit to killing the Empress? Unless he really didn't do it. Siyi stiffened his neck and turned to look at Emperor Jiawen. Emperor Jiawen harshly said, "Elder Yi. Where's Elder Yi? Such a big thing happened in the palace, but Elder Yi still hasn't appeared." At this point, Emperor Jiawen didn't know that Elder Yi, who had been guarding Elder Zhong Yi, had also met with some trouble. Seeing that there was no hope of saving Elder Yi, Emperor Jiawen thought of something. Deep Shen Formation. The Deep Shen Formation was country Yao Chen's palace's defense formation, but he just remembered that the Deep Shen Formation wasn't activated when Rongjio and the rest barged in. Rongjio said, "Oh right? Well that's right. I forgot to tell you that the Deep Shen Formation is also under my control. If you want to take a look, I'll personally send you there. How about that?" Emperor Jiawen felt like he had fallen into an ice hole. Then he was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Chu Xiao, who was standing at the side, had a few drops of blood on him. He wanted to reach out to help him up, but when he thought of what Rongjio said previously, he suddenly felt afraid and took a step back. How could the others not understand at this point? They naturally avoided him. Emperor Jiawen's hands trembled as he pointed at Rongjio. "Why you?" Rongjio lifted his chin and his expression was cold. "It seems like Father's body isn't too good. You should rest properly." As he spoke, he raised his hand. "Someone come and send Father to Qinghe Palace to rest." Emperor Jiawen immediately shouted. "How dare you? Rongjio clearly wants to imprison me." He clenched his teeth. "Rongjio, don't think that I can't do anything to you. Before he could finish his sentence, a huge commotion came from outside. A cold and gloomy aura quickly spread out. Emperor Jiawen suddenly looked up. In that direction, is where Situ Xingqian is being locked up. The most important thing is that this aura, someone touched the bronze cauldron. He didn't even think about it and immediately rushed outside. But before he could take 2 steps, he was stopped by someone. Emperor Jiawen's face flushed red. "Let me go over." "Rongjio, do you know what that is? Let me go over immediately. If not, you'll definitely regret it." The moment he finished his sentence, a greenish-red pillar of light shot up to the sky. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 447. Dark clouds rumbled and heaven and earth darkened. That light pillar went straight for the sky and into the clouds. From afar, it looked like it connected heaven and earth. On top of it, the green and red lights intertwined, forming a strange pattern that made one fearful. Rongjio turned around to take a look and he looked serious. Wei Lin. Immediately send someone to check. What exactly is going on? Yes. Everyone in the hall also looked over with different expressions. Taking advantage of this short gap, Emperor Jiawen suddenly turned around and rushed back. I must be quick. But Rongjio quickly detected this movement and turned around to look coldly. What are you all waiting for? The people at the side immediately reacted and rushed forward to stop Emperor Jiawen again. This time, Emperor Jiawen's hands were tied up and he couldn't move. Rongjio. Rongjio. Emperor Jiawen was furious and his face flushed red. Rongjio waved his hands. Aren't you going to send father to rest? A few soldiers immediately walked over and escorted Emperor Jiawen away. Eunuch Min and a few other servants who served him were also taken away. At the start, Emperor Jiawen was still scolding Rongjio. But when his figure disappeared through the side door, his voice suddenly disappeared, leaving only faint sounds of struggling as if his mouth was stuffed. The crowd looked at one another. At this point it was clear who had won and who had lost. Emperor Jiawen, who was high and mighty a moment ago, was locked up in the blink of an eye. Even though Rongjio didn't directly kill him, Emperor Jiawen's future days wouldn't be good. The entire palace was so quiet that it was suffocating. Rongjio's gaze swept across the crowd and stopped on Siyi for a moment. Siyi's entire body tensed up. Even though the Si family was the head of the four major families, it clearly wasn't a wise move to go against the current Rongjio. Si family head, I'll have to trouble you to accompany father during this period of time. Siyi's heart sank. Is Rongjio planning to put me under house arrest? Third prince. Before Siyi could finish his sentence, Rongjio nonchalantly interrupted him and slowly said, You're not the only one. Don't worry, as long as you take good care of father, I will naturally take good care of everyone in the Si family. This was a blatant threat. Siyi's heart surged with anger, but he suppressed it in the end and said word by word, Since that's the case, I'll have to trouble your highness. Then he turned around and walked in the direction that Emperor Jiawen left in. Several officers and soldiers followed closely behind. Everyone exchanged glances privately. It seems like Rongjio still has a grudge against the empress. Besides, Siyi was the one who sent Rongjio to the execution ground. The Si family situation naturally wouldn't be any better. Seeing that Emperor Jiawen and Siyi had already been dealt with, Chu Xiao was filled with regret. If he had known earlier, he definitely wouldn't have stood out. Now Rongjio will definitely remember this in his heart. As expected, Rongjio's gaze landed on him. Great Elder Chu. Chu Xiao shuddered as he looked at Rongjio fearfully. Third Highness, you're very loyal to father. What? Aren't you going together? Chu Xiao's legs turned to jelly and he immediately said, Your Highness, you're mistaken. Actually just now. Rongjio's gaze was filled with unconcealed mockery. Chu Xiao's heart skipped a beat and he seemed to be choking on something. His face flushed red and white and he wanted to defend himself again. However, under such a mocking gaze he seemed to be a joke. Great Elder Chu, please. The soldier at the side had already spoken first. Sensing their terrifying murderous intent, Chu Xiao clenched and loosened his fists. In the end he could only leave with them. Then the other people who previously stood on Emperor Jiawen's side were brought away. After a short silence, someone mustered his courage and spoke. Congratulations, Hong Long. Before he could say anything to curry favor, another loud sound came from the sky. Rongjio took a deep breath in, turned around and looked over. Wei Lin had already returned. Rongjio asked, Where did that light pillar come from? Wei Lin's expression was very solemn. Your Highness, it seems to have come from Taiyuan Palace. Rongjio knitted his brows. Hasn't nobody been living there since a long time ago? Have you found out who caused such a commotion there? Wei Lin paused before saying, Your Highness. Your Highness, I'm useless. The outside of Taiyuan Palace is covered by a barrier. Outsiders can't get close to it and they can't see the situation inside. I tried to enter 3 times but I didn't succeed. Rongjio was slightly shocked. Wei Lin is a stage 5 warrior and he's very capable. If even he can't break the barrier, bring I there. When the light pillar shot up to the sky, Elder Yi and Elder Zhong Yi, who were in a stalemate, also felt the strong ripple in another hidden dungeon in the palace. Upon hearing the loud sound, the two of them were stunned. There aren't many people in the entire country Yao Chen who can cause such a commotion. Also, it sounds like it's not far from the palace. The two of them held their breaths and focused as they felt the sinister ripple. Suddenly, Elder Yi was shocked. The commotion seems to be coming from where Situ Xingqian is locked up. Most importantly, this aura. Elder Yi had a terrifying and absurd conjecture in his heart. Then he turned around and quickly left. Elder Zhong Yi was stunned. Yi Zhiding actually left just like that? What exactly is so urgent that he actually gave up on guarding me? Thinking of this, Elder Zhong Yi quickly broke free from the cage and followed him. The moment Elder Yi came out, he was stunned by the huge light pillar that connected heaven and earth. He froze on the spot and didn't recover his senses for a long time. Indeed. Someone still touched the bronze cauldron. Elder Zhong Yi, who quickly rushed out, was also shocked when he saw this scene. However, he was more confused. Yi Zhiding is considered someone who has seen many big scenes. What exactly is it that can make him reveal such an expression? However, this question didn't linger in his heart for long. To him, the most important thing now was to find Situ Xingqian and bring her away. Even though the bracelet was destroyed, he was very familiar with Situ Xingqian's aura. As long as she was still in the palace, he could still find her quickly. Thinking of this, Elder Zhong Yi closed his eyes and searched carefully. After a moment, he opened his eyes and deep shock flashed across his eyes. Situ Xingqian seems to be at the spot where the light pillar came from. On the other end, Chu Luiwei and Jian Fengqi also entered the palace amidst the chaos when Rong Jiao led the soldiers into the palace. Luckily, everyone's attention was on Rong Jiao and the rest. In addition, the duo was good at hiding their figures, so their journey was smooth. Until they saw the terrifying light pillar. Jian Fengqi knitted his brows. What's that? It's so eerie. Chu Luiwei didn't have any expression on his face. I'm still a step too late. What? Jian Fengqi was about to ask again when a figure suddenly rushed out of the light pillar. Digression. Trash computer ruining my time and slowing me down. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 448. Under the light, that person's figure was a little blurry, but Chu Luiwei still recognized her. That person was Situ Xingqian. When she flew to the middle of the light pillar, she finally stopped. Then, the surrounding heaven and earth force crazily surged into her body. A few energy whirlpools rapidly appeared around her. Even the pattern on the pillar of light seemed to distort. Chu Luiwei stared at Situ Xingqian's figure closely. As the energy surged in, her aura kept strengthening. What's going on? Jian Fengqi muttered and nudged Chu Luiwei with his elbow. Hey, do you know what she's doing? You were referring to this when you said you were one step too late? Chu Luiwei didn't say anything, but many thoughts surfaced in his mind. That bronze cauldron must be with Situ Xingqian. And it's obvious that she's already activated it. She used the energy inside. She was just a stage 3 warrior previously, but not long after she's about to break through to stage 4. I have to think of a way to stop her. Jian Fengqi stared at it a few more times and knitted his brows. This thing is a little strange. Don't you sense a bloody smell? Chu Luiwei coldly said, the bronze cauldron contains the blood of the bronze cauldron. The bronze cauldron contains the power and blood essence of several hundred cultivators. It's not strange for it to smell like this. Jian Fengqi's expression changed. He was a celestial physician and had killed and saved countless people. But when he heard Chu Luiwei's words, he still felt disgusted. As long as he used his brain to think, he would know what kind of scene it would be. It turns out that the bronze cauldron is such an evil item. In that case, the energy in this light pillar was actually snatched from those people? But the energy accumulated through such means is mottled and messy, and it might even conflict with each other. Once one absorbs this energy, even though it can raise one's cultivation level in the short term, it will greatly affect one's future cultivation. Who's so brainless to do such a thing? He naturally didn't recognize Situ Xingqian. Chu Luiwei pursed her lips tightly. How could Situ Xingqian not know what Jian Fengqi said? But she still chose to do it. Suddenly, Chu Luiwei sensed a strange fluctuation coming from the Qingkuan bag. She carefully examined it and discovered that the commotion actually came from a wooden box. That wooden box happened to be the one I got from Situ Xingqian. Chu Luiwei looked up again and frowned. The movement of the wooden box seemed to have been caused by the light pillar. Inside the wooden box was a roll of parchment. There was a layer of seal on it, and even now she had not been able to break it. Previously, she had thought of many ways to open it, but none of them succeeded, so she put it aside for the time being. Who would have thought that it was related to the bronze cauldron? In midair, Situ Xingqian was still rapidly absorbing the surrounding energy, and her aura was clearly becoming stronger. Following this change, Chu Luiyue clearly felt that the movement in the wooden box was gradually expanding. Jian Fengqi then realized that Chu Luiyue's expression was amiss. "What's wrong with you?" Chu Luiyue shook her head. From what Emperor Jiawen said previously, she could guess that the Empress specially prepared the bronze cauldron for Rong Jin to help him improve his cultivation level. She vaguely guessed that Emperor Jiawen knew something, but she didn't say it. She originally planned to carefully check the item after finding it, but she was one step too late as Situ Xingqian beat her to it. Once it's opened, the energy in the bronze cauldron will definitely be absorbed and turned into Situ Xingqian's energy. But now it seems like things are more troublesome than expected. "What are you looking at? Hurry up and leave." Suddenly, an impatient scolding came from the side. Chu Luiyue quickly turned around and saw a group of people walking over. Her figure moved and she quickly hid in the corner at the side. Upon seeing this, Jian Fengqi also hid. The group of people walked closer and closer. Chu Luiyue then clearly saw that the person being scolded in the middle was actually Emperor Jiawen. Behind him were Eunuch Min and the others, and they all seemed to have suffered. He was surrounded by soldiers in red armor. They were Rong Jiao's men. Emperor Jiawen had already changed out of his dragon robe, and he looked a little disheveled. If one didn't look closely, one wouldn't be able to recognize him. He looked anxious as he kept turning his head to look at the green and red light pillars as if he wanted to say something. It was a pity that his mouth was sealed so he could only make muffled sounds. He couldn't hear anything clearly. The soldiers at the side pushed and shoved him, rushing him forward. Emperor Jiawen kept struggling. Until the person at the side pulled out a sword, pressed it against his waist and hollered, "We have plenty of ways to make you obedient. Why don't you try?" Emperor Jiawen finally stopped, and despair flashed across his eyes as he stumbled forward with them. Very quickly, these people walked past Chu Luiyue and Jian Fengqi and headed in a certain direction. Chu Luiyue's eyes sparkled, and she planned to follow them. Jian Fengqi pulled her back. "Where are you going?" Chu Luiyue glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. "If you want to follow me, go ahead. If you don't want it, you can walk on your own." Jian Fengqi was stumped. Wasn't this girl always polite to him before? Why did she suddenly have such an attitude? He was about to retort when he met her clear eyes. He suddenly felt guilty and softly muttered, "Go ahead. So be it. Why are you so angry? Why is Chu Luiyue's temper so bad? My status is clearly much higher than hers, but why do I feel like I'm lower than her?" Just as he was wondering if the problem was with him, Chu Luiyue had already left with those people. Jian Fengqi could only follow. Those people brought Emperor Jiawen to Qinghe Hall. Emperor Jiawen was locked in a room alone, and the others were locked at the side. The doors and windows were tightly locked, and there were people guarding every corner. Luckily there weren't many people. Actually, Rong Jiao was still wary of Emperor Jiawen, but the entire imperial city was under his control now. After enduring for so many years, he finally succeeded, and he was in a good mood, so he naturally let down his guard. In addition, Situ Xingqian's commotion distracted part of his attention. This made things convenient for Chu Luiyue. After observing for a while, she sent Dumpling out. Dumpling was small and fast, so she quickly caused a commotion and attracted the attention of two guards. Taking advantage of the time when they left to check, Chu Luiyue quickly entered the hall. Bonk. Another thunderous sound was heard. Chu Luiyue turned around and saw that Situ Xingqian had actually become a stage 4 warrior. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 449. However, Situ Xingqian didn't stop there. Instead, she started to absorb the surrounding heaven and earth force at an even faster speed. It was obvious that the greenish-red pillar of light contributed greatly. Chu Luiyue knitted her brows as she looked at the rumbling dark clouds in the sky and the lightning that flashed from time to time. Generally speaking, such a phenomenon would only appear when a rare treasure appeared in the world. For a cultivator to cause such a huge commotion, they had to at least break through to become a stage 5 warrior. One had to know that when Chu Ning recovered from his old injuries and broke through to become a stage 5 warrior, it wasn't like this at all. If this continued, Situ Xingqian would most likely continue to break through. The wooden box in the cosmic bag was also vibrating more and more. Chu Luiyue almost couldn't ignore it anymore. She even felt that there was something in the wooden box that wanted to rush out. At this point, Emperor Jiawen heard the commotion and suddenly turned his head. Chu Luiyue immediately hid behind the study table. At this point, Emperor Jiawen was distracted, and his remaining rationality and attention were all placed on the pillar of light outside. He didn't even notice Chu Luiyue. He slowly walked to the window, which was locked from the outside and couldn't be opened. Hence, he couldn't see the situation outside. He could only see the light reflected on the window. How can this be? How can this be? Emperor Jiawen was dazed as he softly muttered. Ryua, I've let you down in the end. Chu Luiyue was dazed. Ryua? Isn't this Consort Wan back then, Rong Xiu's birth mother? What does Emperor Jiawen mean by saying this at this time? Also, it sounds like there's deep regret and self-blame in his voice. Rumor has it that Emperor Jiawen only doted on Consort Wan back then, and the harem of 3,000 people couldn't compare to her. However, not long after Consort Wan gave birth to Rong Xiu, she had a huge fight with Emperor Jiawen. She then directly moved out of the palace and went to Tianlu Academy. After staying in the academy for 2 years, she passed away. It's normal that Emperor Jiawen can't forget her, but why did he mention her at this time? At this moment, Emperor Jiawen removed something from his neck. Because he was facing Chu Luiyue from his side, Chu Luiyue could only see a rough outline, but could not see clearly what it was. You're still blaming me? Is it because I was wrong that I ended up like this? Emperor Jiawen muttered softly as he looked at the item in his hands. He seemed to be smiling and crying at the same time. Shortly after, the item in his hand suddenly glowed with a faint light. Like a stream of water, it flowed along Emperor Jiawen's arm and spread to his entire body. Very quickly, Emperor Jiawen's entire body was enveloped in that strange light. Chu Luiyue's pupils shrank. After coming out, he planned to stop Situ Xingqian, but Elder Zhongyi blocked his way. The two of them were equally skilled. Without a burden, Elder Zhongye's combat ability was much stronger than before. Hence, after a few moves, the two of them were still tied. Seeing that Situ Xingqian had already broken through and was planning to continue, Elder Yi became increasingly anxious. Zhongyi, do you know what your precious niece is doing? Elder Zhongyi sneered. Isn't it very clear what she's doing? If you want to stop this great opportunity, you'll have to get past me first. That light pillar contained immense strength, and Situ Xingqian had already successfully broken through from a stage 3 warrior to a stage 4 warrior. Not long later, she might even break through to a stage 5 warrior. Situ Xingqian was very talented as a celestial physician, but her progress as a warrior was mediocre. As long as she grasped this opportunity well, she would definitely be 100 times stronger than before. Elder Yi was enraged. This idiot actually thought that Situ Xingqian was lucky enough to obtain this opportunity. He even hoped that she would continue to break through and become a top warrior. He really can't be saved. Since that's the case, I won't stop her. Just wait here and see if she'll become a top warrior in the end. Digression, there are 2 more updates at night. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 450. Elder Zhongye's heart was beating like a drum. He was a rank 6 warrior and could naturally feel that something was wrong with the aura in the light pillar. Seeing Elder Yi in such a state, he became even more worried. However, since he had already said so earlier, it was naturally inappropriate for him to go back on his word. Thinking that Situ Xingqian always knew her limits, he felt more at ease and tried to defend himself. Outsiders like you don't need to worry about this. After saying that, he looked at the pillar of light. At this point, Situ Xingqian's aura had already broken through to the intermediate stage 4 stage, and it was still growing stronger. Elder Zhongyi was half excited and half worried. However, he didn't notice that Elder Ye's eyes flashed with shock when he saw a crack appear on the pattern on the pillar of light. Situ Xingqian's breakthrough speed was faster than he expected. The power within the bronze cauldron was still gushing out. If this continued, things would only get more and more out of hand. Alright. And Emperor Jiawen. Thinking of this, old man Yi turned to leave. Elder Zhongye's eyes were sharp and his hands were nimble. He once again stood in front of him and asked with extreme vigilance, "Where are you going?" Elder Ye's eyes darkened. "Zhongyi, I've already said that I won't stop Situ Xingqian. You better get out of the way now." However, Elder Zhongyi did not believe him at all. Who knew what tricks Yi Zhiding would come up with to deal with him and Xingqian? No matter what, you have to stay here. You can't go anywhere until it's over. Elder Zhongyi sneered. The two of us are evenly matched. Even if I can't take you down, it won't be that easy for you to leave either. Elder Yi was so angry that he almost cursed. He wanted to smash open Zhongye's brain to see if it was filled with water. Zhongyi, don't push your luck. Elder Zhongyi shrugged. It was clear that he wanted to fight him to the end. Unlike the chaotic palace, the Prince Li's mansion was completely quiet at this moment. Rong Xiu stood in the courtyard, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed in the direction of the palace. He raised his eyebrows when he saw the pattern on it start to crack. Umo, who was standing behind him, couldn't help but ask. Master, it seems like Situ Xingshan's ambition is greater than expected. She actually used such a short time to break through to this stage. His limbs were crippled, his origin power sealed, and all the humiliation he suffered in the past few days, anyone would have done the same. Not to mention her? Rong Xiu smiled faintly. Umo thought the same. Situ Xingshan isn't a kind person. Judging from the recent events, this woman is clearly the kind of person who will do anything to achieve her goals. Not to mention that she didn't know the other secret hidden in the bronze cauldron. Even if she knew, she might still try her luck. Third brother, what's your plan? Rong Xiu asked calmly. Umo immediately said, Third Highness, prepare to activate the dark mysterious formation. But for some reason there was no movement at all. Third Imperial brother, when you are on the battlefield, you have always been particular about knowing the enemy and yourself, and you will never be defeated. Now he probably doesn't know what Situ Xingshan wants to do, so he's planning to wait and see. Naturally, he won't act rashly. Besides, he had just taken over the imperial city and was only one step away from the throne. He would naturally be very careful. A smile flashed across Rong Xiu's eyes. Actually, Rong Xiu is very outstanding in all aspects. There's nothing wrong with this idea. However, he didn't know that time wouldn't wait for anyone. If he wanted to wait until he was fully prepared before taking action, it might already be too late. Master, are you not planning to interfere? Asked Umo curiously. Rong Xiu squinted his eyes. Why do I have to do something unnecessary? This way it would save him a lot of trouble. Umo respectfully answered. A ripple suddenly appeared in the air. Umo turned around and saw Yan Qing, whom he hadn't seen in a long time, walking out. He looked like he had rushed back and was covered in dust. Greetings, Master. Yan Qing knelt on one knee and presented a letter with both hands. Rong Xiu looked at the letter calmly. Master, that side can't hold on for much longer. 36 Respected Elder Feng personally wrote a letter to ask you to go back as soon as possible. Hearing 36 Respected Elder Feng, Umo's eyelids twitched. That person actually came out personally? It can be seen that the situation over there isn't optimistic. Actually, thinking about it carefully, Master hasn't gone back in such a long time. Rong Xiu picked up the letter. The moment it touched his fingertips, the letter instantly turned into a ray of light. It flew in front of Rong Xiu. Then the ray of light turned into a circular light screen. A blurry silhouette appeared on top of it. Your Highness, are you really not planning to come back? A low and gentle voice came from within. It was like a gentle breeze that made one feel as if they were bathed in the spring breeze. Umo suddenly shivered as he exchanged glances with Yan Qing. They both saw the fear in each other's eyes. This person actually used such a voice to speak? It's over. Rong Xiu's eyes narrowed slightly, but the corners of his lips still held a light smile. Respected Elder, you've misunderstood. I will go back in a few days. That's good. The voice was still gentle and even had a hint of a smile. That's good. Your Highness hasn't returned for a long time. Everyone thought that you died outside. Rong Xiu's eyelids twitched violently. Digression, there's another update later. Go to bed early. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 451. Umo and Yan Qing both held their breaths and didn't dare to make a sound. If they could, they really wanted to disappear from here right now. There weren't many people in the world who dared to be so rude to His Highness, and this person was one of them. However, he had never said such words in the past. It could be seen that he was furious this time. Rong Xiu coughed. Respected Elder, you're joking. It's good that Your Highness knows. That voice sounded a little fierce, but Yan Qing and Umo both heaved a sigh of relief. In this case they could at least muddle through, right? I heard that Your Highness stayed there for so long this time because of a woman? Rong Xiu's brows moved slightly, and he glanced at Yan Qing from the corner of his eyes. Yan Qing opened her mouth. It wasn't Yan Qing who said it. That elder sneered. It's just this old man's guess. However, it seems that I guessed it right? Rong Xiu paused for a moment and nodded lightly. That's right. 36 Respected Elder Ming was caught off guard by his frank admission. Your Highness has never been close to women. Why did you suddenly become enlightened after going out? The anger from before disappeared and was replaced by curiosity and ridicule. I wonder what kind of woman can make Your Highness like this? It seems that those old fellows still don't know about this? Rong Xiu said honestly. Yes. I haven't returned yet, so it's not appropriate to make it public now. When I return, I will naturally mention this matter personally. These words made the elder in the light screen silent for a while. Your Highness intends to give her a status? Rongxiu smiled. She's Ai's wife. Naturally she has to have a status. What? That elder was shocked and lost his voice. Even the originally blurry figure trembled. Your Highness intends to, but she probably hasn't even entered heaven's canopy before, right? How could those old fellows agree to a woman with such a background? Rongxiu's smile deepened. Didn't you agree just like that? This old man is? How can that group of people be compared to this old man? The old man said angrily. Is your Highness looking down on this old man? Since that woman was chosen by your Highness, this old man naturally trusts her. Moreover, the person who could make His Highness put in so much effort must be someone that His Highness had in mind. Why would this old man object? No wonder His Highness took so long to come back. However, since you were prepared, why did you take so long? At the end of his sentence, the old man's tone was filled with disdain. Rongxiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Don't worry, I know what to do. I'll be back in a few days. If anything happens over there, please take care of it for the time being. The old man smacked his lips twice. This old man has always been impatient with such things. This time, for the sake of His Highness's marriage, I'll just agree. However, when His Highness returns, this old man wants to be the first to see that woman. A glimmer flashed across Rongxiu's deep eyes. This, I'm afraid you'll have to wait for a while. This time she won't be returning with I. What? She won't be coming back with you? The old man was shocked. He was already thinking of what gift to give her. Why did he say that she wouldn't be coming? Wait. Don't tell me she hasn't taken a liking to you? Rongxiu, Yanqing and Umo both shrunk their necks and wished they could find a hole to hide in. They really didn't want to hear this conversation at all. Rongxiu took a deep breath. You don't have to worry about this. She'll be returning to heaven's canopy soon and has some matters to attend to. When she's done, you'll naturally have a chance to see her. The old man's interest was immediately piqued. She came to heaven's canopy but didn't come with you? Then where did she go? What did she do? Rongxiu refused to say more. You'll know all this when it's time. Seeing that Rongxiu wasn't willing to reveal anything, the old man didn't continue asking. Since this is the case, I hope you'll return soon. After saying that, the light screen quickly dissipated. Rongxiu lightly sighed. This time, it had indeed dragged on for too long. Even 36 respected Elder Ming personally wrote a letter. He thought for a moment and asked, What's the matter? What's Mu Qinghe up to today? Umo immediately said, Earlier he went to Ms. Lu Yu's place and left. Rongxiu's expression turned serious. At this time, Mu Qinghe went to find her. Where is he now? Umo was dazed and his expression suddenly changed. According to the previous rules, the people sent to monitor Mu Qinghe had to report to him every once in a while. However, there didn't seem to be any news today. I've been by Rongxiu's side and only cared about Rongjiu's matters, so I actually forgot about this. Umo knelt down with a thud. I've neglected my duty. Master, please punish me. Rongxiu had long realized something when he saw Umo's expression. He knitted his brows. No need. It seems like he left today. Mu Qinghe isn't a simple person. It's impossible for him not to know that someone is secretly monitoring him. There must be a reason why he took action today. Also, where's Yu? Asked Rongxiu immediately. Umo's heart skipped a beat. Rongxiu closed his eyes. After a moment, he opened them and looked in a certain direction. That's where the palace is. She actually entered the palace. He looked at the light pillar that connected the heavens and the earth. As time passed, the light pillar's color seemed to have faded a lot. However, Situ Xingqian's aura was much stronger than before. The most important thing was that many cracks had already appeared on the strange pattern on the light pillar. Rongxiu's eyes darkened. The next moment, another bolt of lightning struck down. That pattern was finally completely torn apart. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 452. Rongxiu's figure moved, and he rapidly disappeared from the yard. Umo and Yanqing looked at each other and followed him. As the strange pattern cracked, Situ Xingqian officially broke through and became a Stage 5 warrior. Seeing that the light pillar didn't show any signs of disappearing and that Situ Xingqian, who was suspended in it, was still absorbing the surrounding heaven and earth force, Rongjiu finally realized that something was amiss. If this continues, who knows if Situ Xingqian will continue to break through. He looked at Wei Lin. Have you found Elder Yi? Wei Lin shook his head. Rongjiu pondered for a moment. Give the order to activate the Deep Xian formation. Upon hearing this, the crowd standing at the back looked at each other. Nobody expected Rongjiu to use the Deep Xian formation, which Emperor Jiawen didn't have the time to activate, to deal with Situ Xingqian. Yes. Wei Lin quickly left with the others. The waiting time was always very unbearable. After around 15 minutes, a ripple finally came from the northwest corner of the palace. A star gradually appeared in midair. Following that, more and more dots of light appeared around the starlight. In the blink of an eye, they connected together. It was like a small galaxy. Almost at the same time, the same scene was happening in the other three directions. All the light spots gathered in the middle. It was as if there was an invisible hand connecting the four pieces of starlight together. When everything gathered together, it finally made a loud sound. It was like a gigantic star net that covered the entire palace. A vast suppression descended. The greenish-red light pillar was also suppressed by this force and started to shrink toward the center. At this point, Situ Xingqian suddenly opened her eyes. That pair of eyes that were always filled with water, were now filled with a scarlet red. Brutal and cold murderous intent crazily surged out from the depths of her eyes. She looked at her wrists and ankles. With the help of that force, all her physical injuries had healed, and her cultivation level had also directly broken through from a stage 3 warrior to a stage 5 warrior. She slowly clenched her fists and felt the abundant strength in her body. She was elated. Previously, she was still a little hesitant, but it now seemed like her decision was right. Not to mention country Yao Qin, even in the entire world, how many people could break through to this level in such a short period of time? Most importantly, the energy in the bronze cauldron had not been completely exhausted. In other words, her strength would continue to rise. She raised her head and saw that the pillar of light seemed to be gradually shrinking. She smiled coldly. Then she clasped her hands together and the force around her surged wildly. In an instant the wind howled. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The pillar of light that entered the clouds suddenly fell down like a waterfall. Those dazzling rays of light, along with an incomparably valiant power, madly surged into her body. Intense pain came from every part of his body. Situ Xingqian saw a few small wounds on her hand bursting open, and sticky, sweet blood slowly seeped out. However, she gritted her teeth and did not stop. Only in this way would he be able to break through faster. As long as she could endure this pain, she would become a top expert in the world. Very quickly, Rongjiu and the rest saw the light pillar, which seemed to connect heaven and earth, rapidly decrease in size. Situ Xingqian's body was like a black hole as it crazily swallowed the light. The uneasiness in Rongjiu's heart intensified. He hollered, "Deep Xian formation, activate." His low and powerful voice reverberated far and wide. Instantly, all the cultivators in the palace exerted their strength. Rays of light intersected on the gigantic Deep Xian formation. Very quickly they outlined a gigantic figure. A dragon's roar reverberated between heaven and earth. It was actually a 7th grade fiend, red-tailed flood dragon. Its entire body was silver, and only its tail was red like a burning flame. Its body was huge and it almost covered the entire sky. When the dragon's roar sounded, even the ground seemed to move. The Deep Xian formation was a protective formation around the palace, but very few people knew that this Xian formation was actually suppressing a red-tailed flood dragon. And it was the most formidable part of the Deep Xian formation. Even though the red-tailed flood dragon was a 7th grade fiend, it had the bloodline of an ancient legendary fiend, the Great Phoenix Dragon. The red-tailed flood dragon could be considered the strongest existence among the 7th grade fiends. Rumors had it that some red-tailed flood dragons had the chance to break through to 8th grade or even higher. The red-tailed flood dragon hovered in mid-air, and its gigantic red eyes were icy cold. It was indifferent. Situ Xingqian's heart skipped a beat. I didn't expect a fiend of such a grade to be hidden under the Deep Xian formation. Even though I'm already a stage 5 warrior, it's still a little wishful thinking for me to deal with a 7th grade fiend. Unless I can break through to the peak of a stage 6 warrior, I'll only have a sliver of hope. Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth, circulated her energy, and rapidly set up a barrier around her. The next moment, the red-tailed flood dragon rapidly charged towards Situ Xingqian. Wherever it passed, black cracks appeared in the air. This showed how strong the suppression around it was. Then the dragon's tail harshly swung out. It heavily hit the barrier in front of Situ Xingqian. Boom! A loud collision sound was heard. A suppressive force directly passed through the barrier and crushed Situ Xingqian's body. Her body trembled, and her face instantly turned much paler. But the next moment, elation flashed across her eyes. That's because the barrier didn't break. With my current stage 5 warrior strength, the barrier I set up definitely won't be able to block the red-tailed flood dragon's attack. Hence, I directly used the light pillar's energy to form this barrier. It's indeed very strong. Situ Xingqian was slightly relieved and continued to absorb the surrounding heaven and earth force. As long as I have a little more time, I might be the red-tailed flood dragon's opponent. Seeing that Situ Xingqian actually withstood the red-tailed flood dragon's attack, the spectators below were shocked. What's with the greenish-red glow on her body? It actually contains such a strong force. In such a short time she already broke through to become a stage 5 warrior. No. She's actually already an intermediate stage 5 warrior. Is she going to break through to become a stage 6 warrior? Did you see that? She seems to be bleeding. Her physical body probably can't take it anymore. What exactly is she planning to do? Not only in the palace, but everyone in the entire imperial city had already seen the commotion. They all looked up at the scene. Situ Xingqian ignored all the gazes. Something seemed to be moving in her chest and blood kept seeping out of her body. However, she couldn't feel any pain and only felt that she was surrounded by a ball of fire. Suddenly, her gaze focused and she looked somewhere. She waved her sleeves. A powerful wave of energy swept out. Chu Luiyue, who was hiding in Qinghe Hall, felt the commotion behind him and alarms went off in his heart. He turned around. A vast suppression came toward him. Digression, I slept at 5 p.m. Woo 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 woo. Mobile users please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 453. A strong force morphed into a bloody whip and harshly lashed toward her. Chu Luiyue immediately backed away. The wooden table that was blocking it instantly shattered. Shards flew everywhere. Half of Qinghe Hall's roof was instantly blown away. However, the bloody whip didn't stop. Instead, it swept toward Chu Luiyue at an even faster speed. Emperor Jiawen, who was standing on the other side of the room, was also shocked by the commotion and immediately turned around. The two of them looked into each other's eyes. Deep shock flashed across Emperor Jiawen's eyes. Chu Luiyue paused in her actions. However, during this short pause, the bloody whip had already reached her waist and was tightly coiling around her. Then her body was harshly pulled away by the bloody whip. Emperor Jiawen's eyes flashed, and he actually hid in an even more secluded corner that wasn't affected. At the same time, the barrier around his body was strengthened. As long as nobody went near him, nobody would notice his abnormality. Chu Luiyue's heart sank. Emperor Jiawen's gaze just now was filled with murderous intent. At this moment, the bloody whip around her waist tightened again. Chu Luiyue suddenly turned around and realized that the other end of the bloody whip was in Situ Xingqian's hands. Situ Xingqian gently waved her wrist, and Chu Luiyue's body uncontrollably flew toward her. Chu Luiyue immediately pulled out her dagger. She harshly slashed at the bloody whip. The bloody whip broke with a loud sound. But before Chu Luiyue could rejoice, she saw the broken part of the bloody whip quickly reconnect. This blood whip was condensed from that strange power, and the dagger was unable to completely cut it apart. In the blink of an eye, she was only 10 steps away from Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian raised her chin and arrogantly looked at Chu Luiyue in front of her. It's indeed you. Now that she had broken through to become an intermediate stage 5 warrior, her perception of her surroundings had increased by several times. Just now, she clearly felt a very familiar and disgusting aura, so she decisively attacked. It really was that B*TCH. Every time Situ Xingqian saw Chu Luiyue's face, hatred would surge in her heart. She would definitely make Chu Luiyue pay her back 100-fold for everything she had experienced before. Thinking of this, she waved her wrist without hesitation. The blood whip suddenly loosened and immediately lashed towards Chu Luiyue's face. Chu Luiyue immediately dodged. However, Situ Xingqian's current cultivation level was much higher than hers, and it was the same for her speed and strength. Even though she had already dodged at full speed, she was still caught in the crossfire. Chu Luiyue's left arm was instantly lacerated. Blood flowed like a river. Because of this powerful impact, her body also fell to the ground fiercely. The moment he saw Chu Luiyue appear in the air, Yi Lao was shocked and wanted to rush over to help. That girl is still a stage 3 warrior. How can she be Situ Xingqian's match? But as soon as he moved, Elder Zhong Yi blocked his path again. Elder Zhong Yi, who had suffered a lot previously and was very aggrieved, finally vented his anger. Yi Zhiding, didn't you say that your precious disciple is a rare genius? Why are you in such a hurry to help? Why don't we take a good look at the two of them and see who will win? Yi Zhiding finally couldn't hold it in and scolded. Who does that Situ Xingqian think she is? How can she be compared to my disciple? Do you think that the humiliation at the Qin Jiao competition wasn't enough? Zhongyi, don't be smug too early. Situ Xingqian activated the bronze cauldron on her own accord and swallowed the strength of hundreds of cultivators. Even if she can break through in a short period of time, there will be endless trouble in the future. Zhongye's heart skipped a beat. No wonder I felt that Situ Xingqian's aura was a little off. But at such a crucial moment, how can I boost someone else's morale and destroy my own? You don't have to worry about this. You'd better think about whether or not your precious disciple can survive this time. From what I see, Xingqian's move can directly take away half of her life. She's just a stage 3 warrior. Perhaps she can't even last 3 moves against Xingqian. Yi Zhiding's expression was extremely cold as he stared at Elder Zhongyi with deadly eyes and said word by word, I only have this one disciple in my entire life. If anyone dares to hurt her, I won't rest until I'm dead. As his voice fell, the aura on his body suddenly skyrocketed. Elder Zhongyi was stunned. Yi Zhiding is actually serious about this. The next moment, Elder Yi had already rushed toward him. The two of them instantly engaged in a fight. Rong Jiao stared at the scene in midair, and his expression didn't look too good. Just now, Chu Luiyue seemed to have come out of Qinghe Hall. The crowd behind him fell silent. Rong Jiao turned around and walked toward Qinghe Hall with big strides. Previously he had clearly sent quite a few people to escort Emperor Jiawen to Qinghe Hall, but Chu Luiyue was actually there as well. If it weren't for Situ Xingqian's sudden attack, he didn't know when he would find out about this. Just as Chu Luiyue's body was about to land heavily on the ground, she suddenly felt a force pulling her from behind. Chu Luiyue turned around and realized that it was Dumpling biting the corner of her shirt. She pulled her back. Wah! The soft material couldn't withstand such a pull, and it suddenly tore apart. Panic flashed across Dumpling's eyes. If I land on her, I'll be seriously injured. The piercing aura was like a steel knife as it quickly scraped across Chu Luiyue's body. She focused her gaze and saw that the white marble floor was rapidly approaching. Her heart tingled, and she was about to activate the water droplet strength in her dantian when she saw a white figure flash across her eyes. The next moment she felt herself falling into a ball of softness. Shue Shue. Chu Luiyue looked at Shue Shue, who suddenly appeared and saved her, in surprise. Shue Shue's 4 hooves stepped lightly as it carried Chu Luiyue up. Brr. A majestic lion's roar reverberated throughout the area. Everyone was stunned by this sudden scene. In midair, Chu Luiyue, who should have fallen to the ground, was sitting on the back of a muscular snow-white lion. The wind blew, and her black hair fluttered like a black flag in the wind. Not only was there not the slightest bit of timidity or fear on that peerlessly beautiful face, it was instead filled with a lofty majesty. Cold, arrogant, determined. At one glance, she was incomparably noble, and it made one subconsciously want to submit to her. She and Situ Xingqian were facing each other from afar, but even Situ Xingqian, who had a higher cultivation level, seemed to be shorter. Countless pairs of eyes that saw this scene were all dazed. Is this really Chu Luiyue? Chu Luiyue lowered her gaze and glanced at the wound on her left arm. She then slowly raised her head and stared coldly at Situ Xingqian in front of her. Her lips suddenly curved up into a cold smile. Very good. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 454. Situ Xingqian was taken aback by Chu Luiyue's gaze, and a tinge of fear unknowingly grew in her heart. However, she suddenly woke up in the next moment. Fear. Chu Luiyue is definitely not my match now. The one who should be afraid should be Chu Luiyue. Situ Xingqian suppressed her emotions as her gaze landed on the white lion, and her pupils constricted. That's clearly Rong Xiu's fiend. Rong Xiu has never summoned it in front of others before, and very few people know about this. I only found out about it once by accident. Now, it actually appeared here and even saved Chu Luiyue? Is it trying to help Chu Luiyue to the end? Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth and suddenly sneered. What? Do you want to fight with me? Chu Luiyue circulated the force around his body, and an abundant amount of force flowed out of his dantian and into his right index finger. You wanted to kill me first. Am I not allowed to kill you in return? Situ Xingqian did not care about Chu Luiyue's actions. Instead, she chuckled as if she had heard a joke. You're just a stage 3 warrior? Her words were filled with undisguised mockery and disdain. Chu Liyue's smile deepened. Yes, I do. I'm indeed a stage 3 warrior now, but I didn't say that I can only display the abilities of a stage 3 warrior. Situ Xingqian almost thought that Chu Liyue had gone crazy. Okay. Today I want to see how long you can be arrogant for. The moment she said that, the bloody whip in her hand flew up again. She whipped it harshly. Piak. This time she used an even stronger force than before. When the bloody whip pierced through the air, it easily tore the space apart and left a few black cracks. In the blink of an eye, the bloody whip carried a strong force and went straight for Chu Liyue. Shui quickly dodged. Its speed was extremely fast and it looked like a bolt of lightning. The blood whip missed. Situ Xingqian's face darkened. With the help of that high-level magical beast, not to mention killing Chu Liyue, even wanting to injure her had become a difficult task. She raised her wrist. The blood whip chased after Chu Liyue. Shui's figure flashed, and she easily dodged the attack again. Situ Xingqian refused to believe it and attacked again. Above the blood whip, there was even a faint layer of green-red light. The power contained within it was much stronger than the previous 2 times. When the bloody whip flew out, Situ Xingqian angrily shouted, "What the hell? Don't run if you have the guts." Before Chu Liyue could reply, Shui had already turned around and raised a claw, swinging it forward fiercely. Whoosh! The blood whip was torn apart by Shui's claws. Situ Xingqian gasped. This magical beast was actually stronger than he had imagined? Shui glanced at Situ Xingqian. Her icy blue eyes were cold and indifferent. It was as if she was looking down on an ant. Chu Liyue lightly patted Shui's head. Well done. Shui turned around, and the frost in its eyes disappeared, replaced by unconcealed arrogance and delight. That huge, furry head intimately rubbed against Chu Liyue's palm a few times. It was completely different from its previous cold and dignified appearance. Situ Xingqian was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. She was also affected by the counterattack just now. Her internal organs felt like they were squeezed into a ball. She originally wanted to take the chance to take revenge and get rid of Chu Liyue completely, but it seemed like it would be a little difficult now. Unless my cultivation level could increase again. Yes. I can only kill Chu Liyue if I continue to cultivate and become an even stronger warrior. Thinking of this, Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in and strengthened the barrier around her. Then she closed her eyes and continued to absorb the surrounding power. Actually, the power contained in the greenish-red light from the bronze cauldron kept flowing into her body. As long as she focused at the most crucial moment and tried to break through, she would succeed. Chu Liyue saw Situ Xingqian suddenly stop. He thought about it and understood her intentions. How can there be such a good thing in the world? Fighting whenever she wants and stopping to break through whenever she wants? Just as Chu Liyue thought of this, a red figure flashed across his eyes. Dumpling actually flew directly towards Situ Xingqian. At this point, if Chu Liyue was in front, he would see Dumpling puffing up her cheeks in anger. Damn it. My limelight has been stolen. Once Dumpling thought of how it tried to pull Chu Liyue back but failed and was even swept away by that power, it was furious and embarrassed. Compared to the White Lion's performance, it had no face at all. Upon seeing Dumpling rushing toward her, Situ Xingqian's lips curled up into a cold smile. This barrier's defensive power is very strong, and even the 7th grade red-tailed flood dragon might not be able to break it, let alone this 3rd grade blood ferret. It does have some capabilities, but, with a bang, Dumpling directly pounced on the barrier and harshly bit down on it. Gotcha. A gigantic hole instantly appeared. Situ Xingqian's smile froze and disbelief filled her eyes. How is this possible? As if venting its anger, Dumpling harshly bit to the side. Gotcha. A similar scene appeared in the Qingjiao competition again. Even Chu Liyue couldn't help but be shocked. Why does Dumpling's teeth seem to be better than before? Even though the barrier around Situ Xingqian was thick, it couldn't stop Dumpling from creating such a barrier. At first, she wanted to ignore this matter and quickly break through. However, when she saw Dumpling biting a hole and stuffing itself into it, she finally couldn't take it anymore and was forced to stop. Chu Liyue. If you're really capable, fight one-on-one with me. F***ck, these fiends are nothing. Chu Liyue blinked and smiled. Isn't it my capability that I can summon such a fiend to help me? I didn't say that you can't do this. Since you hate me to the core, just use whatever means you have. Situ Xingqian's chest seemed to be choked by something, and her face flushed red. How can a normal fiend be these two's match? Chu Liyue suddenly shouted, Shui Xingqian. Shua. Shui Shui seemed to have telepathy with her as it stomped on the ground and instantly rushed towards Situ Xingqian. Upon seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. Is Chu Luiyue actually planning to fight Situ Xingqian head-on? That white lion is a high-level fiend. Didn't you see how easily it defeated Situ Xingqian's attack? With its help, Chu Luiyue might win. But Situ Xingqian is a few grades stronger than her. If they fight head-on, Chu Luiyue will definitely be at a disadvantage. 2 rays of light, one green and one red, gathered in Situ Xingqian's hands. Then she harshly clasped her hands together. The 2 rays of light instantly clashed together. Dual palms. Chu Luiyue raised her hand. On her right index finger, a dazzling ray of light suddenly flashed. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Situ Xingqian kept circulating the energy in her body and channeling it into the palm print, but it was to no avail. She looked at Chu Luiyue in disbelief and resentment. 1 finger. Chu Luiyue actually used 1 finger to defeat me? Actually, Chu Luiyue was just as shocked as Situ Xingqian. This was the first time she had officially executed Jingxian Finger after learning it. She knew that Jingxian Finger was very powerful, but she didn't expect it to be this powerful. It was clearly stronger than same-grade warrior techniques. Chu Luiyue looked at his finger. That grand and brilliant light contained immense power. If she didn't see it with her own eyes, she probably wouldn't have believed this scene. Could this be the strength of a heaven-grade warrior technique? Situ Xingqian finally panicked. If I continue fighting with Chu Luiyue, I definitely won't be able to gain any advantage. The only thing I can do now is to quickly increase my abilities. Boom. That gigantic palm print finally disappeared completely. Even that strange pattern disappeared once again. Blood seeped out of the corner of Situ Xingqian's mouth. Together with her originally blood-stained body, she looked even more pathetic. The next moment she suddenly turned around and ran into the distance. Chu Luiyue raised his brows slightly and patted Shui Shui lightly. Shui Shui immediately understood and rushed forward. Its speed was naturally faster than Situ Xingqian's, and it blocked her path in no time. Seeing that Chu Luiyue had caught up so quickly, Situ Xingqian's face turned a little ugly. Eldest Princess Situ, we haven't decided who the winner is, yet you're running away just like that? Isn't it a little inappropriate? Asked Chu Luiyue with a faint smile. Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth. She could feel countless pairs of eyes staring at her from below. Mockery and disdain. They're all here for me. Who said that I'm running away? Situ Xingqian forced herself to shout, and her voice was much sharper than before. You just used some unorthodox methods. Chu Luiyue, do you really think that you're my match? Chu Luiyue laughed. Unorthodox methods? Those words should be returned to Situ Xingqian. You'll know whether I'm your match or not very soon. Chu Luiyue smiled, but a tinge of murderous intent flashed across her eyes. The next moment she jumped up and went straight for Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian was shocked at first, but she then sneered in her heart. Chu Luiyue actually wants to have a physical fight with me. This is the stupidest choice I've made today. The two of us are 2 whole stages apart, and Chu Luiyue's physical strength can't be compared to mine. If Chu Luiyue continues to use the previous move, I might not be able to withstand it. But now, I'm clearly courting death. You're courting death. Situ Xingqian circulated the force in her body and stretched out her hand. Flying Eagle Claw. A few afterimages mixed together. They all went for Chu Luiyue's face. Chu Luiyue leaned forward. She didn't know how her wrist moved, but it avoided Situ Xingqian's move and tightly clamped onto her wrist. Then she exerted force with her fingers and tightly clenched them. Kacha. The crisp sound of a bone breaking was heard. Ah! Situ Xingqian cried out in pain. Her entire face turned pale. At that moment, there was only one thought left in her mind. Why is Chu Luiyue's wrist so strong? Situ Xingqian instinctively raised her leg and kicked at Chu Luiyue. However, Chu Luiyue was even faster. Bang! The 2 people's legs harshly collided. Situ Xingqian felt as if she had hit a metal plate, and her entire leg instantly turned numb. After a short pause, intense pain surged through her. She suddenly looked up and stared at Chu Luiyue with eyes full of resentment. UB*T. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up, and a cold glint flashed across her palm. It went straight for Situ Xingqian's heart. Situ Xingqian was shocked. She immediately tried her best to dodge it. That dagger pierced into her chest and was only a few centimeters away from her heart. However, Chu Luiyue didn't let go. Instead, he tightened his grip on the dagger's handle and harshly twisted it. Separate. Two thin flying daggers instantly entered Situ Xingqian's body. Digression. I'm adjusting my schedule today. I'll take my medicine and sleep later. I hope I can sleep well. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock a.m. please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. She didn't need to look to know that her shoulder blade had been pierced. Didn't you want to fight me one-on-one? Chu Luiyue said slowly as he played with the dagger in his hand. As you wish. It was much more convenient for the two of them to fight on the ground. When Situ Xingqian saw Chu Luiyue's nonchalant smile, she couldn't help but shiver harshly. She only felt that the current Chu Luiyue was like a demon that walked out of hell. What do you want to do? Situ Xingqian yelled fiercely. I am country Xing Luo's eldest princess. How dare you touch me? Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh out loud. Eldest Princess Situ, of course I know your identity. But didn't I just punch a hole through you? You don't have to ask such nonsense, right? Situ Xingqian's heart sank. Chu Luiyue really looks like he doesn't have any reservations at all. You seem to have forgotten what you just did. Chu Luiyue lifted his chin, and his gaze swept across her entire body. Who do you think will speak up for you now? After causing such a huge commotion in country Yao Chen's palace, neither Emperor Jiawen nor Rong Jiao would let this matter rest. Besides, Situ Xingqian was in the wrong first. Previously, Situ Yan couldn't save her, so it's even more impossible this time. As Chu Luiyue spoke, he took a step forward. Panic flashed across Situ Xingqian's eyes, and she instinctively took a step back. The current me might not even be Chu Luiyue's match. Besides, Chu Luiyue has an advanced fiend helping him. Situ Xingqian's heart became increasingly frantic, and something crazily moved in her chest, wanting to rush out. It would be great if he could become stronger. It was as if a sharp voice kept reverberating in her mind. Chu Luiyue squinted his eyes and was about to go forward to finish Situ Xingqian off completely when he saw her suddenly look up. A bloody glow flashed across Situ Xingqian's eyes. Chu Luiyue's eyes shrunk. Instinctively, he felt that something was amiss with Situ Xingqian. Previously, Situ Xingqian's eyes were actually bloodshot, but Chu Luiyue thought that she became like that because of her anger and agitation. But now, that bloody red color seemed to have become even more intense. The most important thing was that Situ Xingqian's pupils had actually turned red as well. From afar they looked like two eyeballs filled with craziness and murderous aura. Dong dong. A strange sound came from the Chengkuan bag. Dong dong. This time the sound was even clearer. Chu Luiyue suddenly understood something. This was the sound from the wooden box in the cosmic bag. The thing inside seemed to have been summoned and crazily wanted to come out. She lowered her head and was about to suppress it when she suddenly saw a ray of light rushing out and heading straight for Situ Xingqian. It was that wooden box. Situ Xingqian grabbed the wooden box in her hands. Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. Then she saw Situ Xingqian open the wooden box. That goatskin scroll glowed faintly as it floated in front of Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian threw the wooden box down and slowly bit her fingertip. A drop of blood quickly flowed out. The next moment, she held the goatskin scroll in her hands and used her bleeding finger to lightly draw a line on it. Chu Luiyue stared at this scene closely and felt that she seemed to have overlooked something. After looking at it for a while, she finally understood what was going on. Situ Xingqian seemed to be controlled by something. At this moment, there was no longer any normal emotions in her pair of eyes. There was only endless craziness and murderous intent left. Her movements were stiff and slow, as if there was an invisible hand that was controlling everything about her. Chu Luiyue's gaze landed on the goatskin scroll again. Suddenly her eyes focused. The picture that Situ Xingqian drew with her blood was clearly Chu. Chu Luiyue quickly threw the dagger in her hand. It went straight for Situ Xingqian. But at this moment, Situ Xingqian had already drawn the last line. The complete and strange picture appeared in front of her eyes. Ding! The dagger seemed to have hit something and suddenly bounced back. The next moment, the goatskin scroll slowly opened up. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 457. A blinding red light instantly exploded from the parchment and completely surrounded Situ Xingqian. Then countless tiny cracks instantly appeared on Situ Xingqian's body. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. With a bang, Situ Xingqian fell to the ground and curled up into a ball. Her mind was blank and she only felt pain and itchiness all over her body. It was as if thousands of ants were crazily biting her. Situ Xingqian almost instinctively scratched her body. Not only did she tear her clothes, but she even used her delicately manicured nails to leave streaks of blood on her skin. When her neck was scratched out of shape, she finally reached her hand to her face. Then she scratched it harshly without hesitation. A few streaks of blood instantly covered half of her face. Her originally pretty face was ruined in an instant. It became ugly and scary. Ah! Situ Xingqian screamed hysterically. Upon seeing this scene, Chu Luiyue knitted his brows tightly. Situ Xingqian's body is clearly being taken over. Also, the person who wants to take over her body has a very high cultivation level. That's why her physical body couldn't withstand the terrifying suppression, and her skin and flesh were torn apart. It's no wonder I couldn't break the barrier on the parchment no matter what. It turns out that there's another cultivator's soul hidden inside. Situ Xingqian's body gradually stopped twitching. The moment the red light on her body disappeared, she slowly stood up and looked up at Chu Luiyue. That's a completely different pair of eyes. Unfamiliar, cold and ruthless. Alarm bells rang in Chu Luiyue's heart, and he immediately retreated. But at this moment, Situ Xingqian raised her hand. Chu Luiyue only felt a strong suction force enveloping his entire body, and his entire body uncontrollably fell forward. Shui Shui roared angrily and jumped over. Situ Xingqian's gaze turned and coldly glanced at it. A huge blood-red barrier instantly appeared, blocking Shui Shui outside. Bang! Shui Shui slammed heavily into the barrier. However, the barrier wasn't damaged at all. Many ways to escape flashed across Chu Luiyue's mind, but she quickly realized that the force in her body was being suppressed by the other party's suppression. Under this terrifying suppression, her body almost couldn't move. The next moment, Situ Xingqian suddenly grabbed her neck. Chu Luiyue's neck tightened. Situ Xingqian looked at Chu Luiyue from above, and her lips curled into a cold smile. I really have to thank you. Even though it was the same face and voice, Chu Luiyue knew that this wasn't the real Situ Xingqian when she saw the pair of eyes. Without you, Shui Shui and Situ Shui and it. Chu Luiyue's neck was strangled, and her entire body was suspended in the air. As the hand kept tightening, Chu Luiyue's face gradually flushed red, and her chest felt so stifled that it was about to explode. Why you? Chu Luiyue wanted to say something, but she could only spit out a few words. She tried to pry Situ Xingqian's hand away, but she only felt sticky and sweet blood. Situ Xingqian watched her struggle as if she was watching a joke. Her eyes were filled with disdain and contempt. Crack! Another crisp sound was heard. Situ Xingqian looked up. Dumpling had already rushed to the barrier she had set up and tried to bite an opening. But this time, it only left clear teeth marks on the surface. How can the barrier I personally set up be broken so easily? Her tone was light, but it was filled with unconcealed arrogance. Chu Luiyue was even more certain that this person had already taken over Situ Xingqian. Even if the real Situ Xingqian isn't dead, she's not far from it. Tuanzi's face was full of resentment. She didn't believe it and bit down again. Crack! It was the same as before. Situ Xingqian seemed to be impatient as she turned her gaze and looked at Shui Shui. She then revealed a meaningful smile. This fiend is quite capable, but it's a pity that it's not yours. This sentence was naturally directed at Chu Luiyue. But at this point, Chu Luiyue's face was flushed red, and she was almost suffocating. She couldn't even say a single word. Situ Xingqian admired it for a while in satisfaction before slowly saying, I originally intended to kill you. I didn't plan to kill you, but since you've destroyed this body, don't blame me for being merciless. Chu Luiyue suddenly raised her hand and a cold glint flashed across her palm. The dagger instantly stabbed toward Situ Xingqian's wrist. But Situ Xingqian seemed to have expected it as she quickly reached out with her other hand and directly clamped Chu Luiyue's wrist. She harshly twisted it. Gotcha. Excruciating pain attacked her. Chu Luiyue's vision turned black for a moment. It's just an eye for an eye. Situ Xingqian sneered, and her eyes were filled with intense murderous intent. The moment the bones in her hand broke, the dagger also landed in Situ Xingqian's hand. She held the dagger and pressed it against Chu Luiyue's face. The cold touch made Chu Luiyue's heart tremble. Your face is quite, HM? This dagger. As Situ Xingqian spoke, her gaze suddenly landed on the dagger and her eyes changed. Chu Luiyue wasn't sure if it was an illusion, but he vaguely saw a tinge of shock and fear on her face. Now is the time. Chu Luiyue gathered all the strength in his body, hugged Situ Xingqian's wrist with both hands and harshly twisted it. At the same time that she instinctively let go of her hand, she kicked her leg out. With the help of the rebound force, Chu Luiyue finally broke free from Situ Xingqian's grip and jumped back. But this time, Situ Xingqian didn't immediately chase after him. Instead, she looked at Chu Luiyue in confusion. Where did this dagger come from? Her tone was very anxious, and there seemed to be a tinge of fear in it. Chu Luiyue knitted his brows. The person who asked this question wasn't the real Situ Xingqian but the person who took over her body. However, there doesn't seem to be anything special about this dagger, so why did she have such a reaction? Seeing that Chu Luiyue didn't react, Situ Xingqian became even more anxious and took a step forward. Hurry up and say it. A thought suddenly flashed across Chu Luiyue's mind. This dagger was given to me by Rongxiu back then. Also, if I didn't remember wrongly, he seemed to have personally polished it. This should be the only one in the world and other people shouldn't be able to recognize it. This person's reaction is really too strange. What if I don't want to say it? Chu Luiyue asked word by word. Situ Xingqian chuckled. You don't want to say it, right? I naturally have my ways to make you say it clearly. The moment she said that, she quickly crossed her hands in front of her, and the force around her crazily surged. A ball of white flame quickly burned in front of her. Then the flame split into two and completely surrounded Chu Luiyue. Her figure was instantly surrounded by the scorching flame. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. During this period, Chi-Han had also been probing around Princely Mansion, so he must have realized that something was amiss. If the 13 U guards didn't even have this bit of ability, they didn't need to exist. They would only be a burden to her if they stayed by her side. Just as Chi-Han was hesitating on how to deal with this, a loud sound was suddenly heard. He immediately turned around to look. His pupils shrank. He saw a red flame suddenly rushing out from the burning white flame. In an instant, sparks flew everywhere. With that ball of flame as the center, violent energy crazily swept out in all directions. The road paved with white jade was instantly smashed to smithereens and sent flying everywhere. The crimson flames covered the sky and engulfed the white flames with ease. It was almost a one-sided suppression. A slender and straight figure gradually became clear. Countless pairs of eyes stared at that figure. She walked out slowly, her black hair and clothes fluttering. Her eyes were piercingly cold. She was like the god of death who had walked out from the flames of hell. Everyone who saw this scene sucked in a breath of cold air. That was Chu Luiyue. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 459. Her entire body was burning with scarlet flames. Reflected in her eyes, it became a flickering flame. Her footsteps were neither fast nor slow, but every step she took felt like she was stepping on the crowd's hearts. Jian Fengqi and Elder Yi, who originally wanted to rush over to help her, subconsciously stopped. Chi-Han clenched his fists tightly and tried his best to control the waves in his heart. Her Highness is indeed Her Highness. Even if she's at a disadvantage, she can still survive. How many people in this world can do this? He could not help but turn around to look at Rongxiu, but he did not see any shock on Rongxiu's face. Instead, Rongxiu had a faint smile as if he had already expected all of this. This princely seems to be even more mysterious and powerful than I expected. Situ Xingqian's cold and fierce eyes suddenly cracked, revealing a tinge of shock and panic. For some reason she felt a strong threat from Chu Luiyue. He's just a stage 3 warrior. Where did this suppression and aura come from? Chu Luiyue finally stood still and looked up at Situ Xingqian. She then raised her hand. A ball of crimson flame suddenly condensed in her palm. A terrifying pressure slowly spread out from the fireball. Situ Xingqian felt increasingly uneasy, and her throat became extremely dry. Chu Luiyue stared at her, and his lips suddenly curled up into a smile, but it was extremely cold. She enunciated every word clearly. I hate it when people snatch my things. It was so in the past and it's even more so now. Situ Xingqian's heart suddenly sank and she instinctively retreated. Chu Luiyue remained standing at his original spot, and he quickly waved his arm. Go! The fist-sized fireball immediately flew towards Situ Xingqian. Wherever it passed, a deep rut would appear on the ground. Situ Xingqian was fast, but it was even faster. The crowd only saw a fireball flying across the sky. The next moment, the fireball had already rushed in front of Situ Xingqian. Unable to avoid it, Situ Xingqian simply stopped and clenched her teeth. In the end, Chu Luiyue was only a stage 3 warrior. How strong could he be? She didn't believe that she couldn't even take a blow from Chu Luiyue. Thinking of this, Situ Xingqian rapidly gathered the force in her body, transformed it into a sickle-like blood-colored light blade and flew forward. The blood-red light blade instantly split the fireball into two. Situ Xingqian snorted. That's all? Before she could finish speaking, her expression suddenly froze. Chu Luiyue's smile deepened. Originally, I wanted to do it myself. I didn't expect you to take the initiative. You saved me a lot of effort. Other than Situ Xingqian, nobody else could see that there was a transparent flame hidden in the middle of the red fireball. Chu Luiyue fused the two powers and delivered a fatal blow. The moment Situ Xingqian saw the transparent fire, she widened her eyes in shock. That was, whoosh. Two balls of flame swept over. Before Situ Xingqian could move, she felt an intense burning pain in her chest. She slowly lowered her head and saw that there was a bloody hole the size of a fist in her lower abdomen. Although it was a bloody hole, no blood actually flowed out. Due to the flame's terrifyingly high temperature, the skin and flesh around the wound were instantly charred, and the entire wound looked terrifying. However, the most important thing was that the pearl of essence was in her abdomen. When her abdomen was pierced, the pearl of essence inside was completely shattered. Situ Xingqian looked at the wound on her body and was dazed for a long time. It wasn't until she felt the origin power in her body begin to disperse uncontrollably that she finally came to her senses. You destroyed this physical body? She suddenly looked up, and her eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. This was the chance that I waited for with much difficulty. It hadn't even been a quarter of an hour since she had successfully taken over this body. Chu Luiyue smiled. This physical body isn't worthy of you. You don't have to thank me. Situ Xingqian was about to go crazy. She had waited for so many years and put in so much effort, but in the end, it was so easily destroyed by Chu Luiyue. You are courting death. Situ Xingqian let out a sharp roar filled with hatred. However, her pearl of essence was already shattered, and she couldn't gather force with this body. The more she wanted to recover, the worse the situation was. It was as if the more she wanted to hold onto the sand in her hands, the faster it would flow away. She tried many times, but her pearl of essence was already destroyed, and it couldn't be recovered. Faced with Situ Xingqian's overwhelming murderous intent, Chu Luiyue didn't care at all and looked relaxed. Every time you possess a body, you'll use up a lot of force and might even damage yourself. I think you can't possess a second body now, right? Asked Chu Luiyue with a faint smile. Situ Xingqian was so angry that her face turned white. This was because Chu Luiyue was speaking the truth. Under such circumstances, it would be a fool's dream to possess Chu Luiyue's body again and kill her. Her expression changed and ruthlessness flashed across her eyes. Bang! Situ Xingqian's body suddenly exploded. Xingqian. Elder Zhong Ye's face turned white in an instant. He looked at this scene in disbelief and felt that the world was spinning. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. Situ Xingqian had been at Mingyue Tianshan for many years, and he had always doted on her and even treated her as his own. Now that he suddenly saw this scene, it was undoubtedly a huge blow to him. His eyes instantly turned red and he hated Chu Luiyue to the core. Chu Luiyue, give me your life. Without waiting for him to rush over, Elder Yi blocked him once again. Elder Zhong Yi was about to go crazy. Yi Jiding. Chapter 460. That ball of red shot into the air and tore a hole in the deep Shen array. The red-tailed flood dragon let out an angry roar. But that ball of red pierced through its tail. Crush. The huge deep Shen array was completely broken. It turned into countless streaks of light and scattered in all directions. It looked like that thing was about to escape. Chu Luiyue's heart tightened. Just as she was about to chase after it, a silver sword suddenly pierced through the air. The sound of the sword was like thunder. When it entered her ears, it seemed to reach straight to her heart. Chu Luiyue seemed to have sensed something and looked up. She saw that the sword drew a bright arc in the air and quickly pierced toward that ball of red light. Clang! The sword pierced the ground and directly nailed that thing to death. Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed. A normal sword could not possibly nail a spirit body, especially one that was rather powerful. It was obvious that the pressure from the long sword was suppressing him. She was very familiar with the aura on it. She looked in the direction of the sword and instantly met a pair of deep eyes. Her heart suddenly felt like it had been hit by something soft. It was indeed him. However, this feeling did not last long because she immediately realized that the person standing beside Rong Xiu was Qi Han. These two people were actually together? Chu Luiyue's heart instantly skipped a few beats. Rong Xiu and Qi Han. What did they say? Did they know each other's identities? Rong Xiu was easy to deal with, but what about Qi Han? Rong Xiu was very resourceful. If he really wanted to know something, Chu Luiyue was full of doubts. The atmosphere between Rong Xiu and Qi Han became tense again. Why did you suddenly attack? Qi Han suddenly turned around and questioned in a deep voice. Just now, it was Rong Xiu who said that Her Highness could handle everything by herself. That was why he suppressed the worry in his heart and did not rush forward. But in the blink of an eye, Rong Xiu was caught off guard and attacked. Rong Xiu glanced at Qi Han and smiled faintly. Because this prince is her fiancé. So calm and collected. So self-righteous. Qi Han's eyes widened as he suddenly realized something. You did it on purpose? In that case, Rong Xiu naturally became the first person to help His Highness. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. This prince is only thinking for you, or? His tone was light as if he didn't think of anything else. Qi Han did not speak for a long time. Rong Xiu's words made sense. Now that Her Highness had not yet returned to the Tianling dynasty, if Her Highness's plan failed because of him, then he could only apologize with his death. But Rong Xiu was obviously selfish. There won't be a next time. Qi Han said coldly. Rong Xiu's eyebrows moved slightly and his smile deepened. You, is my fiancé, so this is what I should do. Qi Han clenched his fists. Chapter 461. Vigorous origin power surged around his body, and the seal above his head had almost completely disappeared. Chu Luiyue previously knew that Emperor Jiawen wasn't weak, but he didn't expect him to be this strong. The current him has actually reached the peak of stage 6. But he hasn't stopped. A ridiculous guess suddenly surfaced in Chu Luiyue's mind. If the seal completely disappears and Emperor Jiawen's abilities break through again, as if to prove my guess, the surrounding heaven and earth force crazily surged into Emperor Jiawen's body as the last stroke on the seal gradually disappeared. The aura on his body was still constantly strengthening. If Chu Luiyue was already like this, what about the other people who didn't know anything? When Emperor Jiawen's figure appeared in midair and revealed his true cultivation level, almost everyone was stunned. That's His Majesty? It really is His Majesty. Wasn't he escorted to Qinghe Hall previously? Why is he, stage 6 warrior? His Majesty is actually a stage 6 warrior? The crowd discussed fervently, and the last sentence finally woke them up. The few family heads standing at one side exchanged glances and fell into an eerie silence. This happened too suddenly and it was too horrifying. Everyone in country Yaoqin knew that Emperor Jiawen's cultivation talent could barely be considered not bad. Compared to a real genius, it wasn't worth mentioning. In addition to the many years of living like a prince, one didn't need to think to know that Emperor Jiawen's combat skills were very weak. Even just a moment ago, the patriarchs were thinking the same thing. If not, Emperor Jiawen wouldn't have lost so quickly when Rong Jiu barged in, and he wouldn't have been in such a pathetic state. But now, it seemed like the rich strength and formidable suppression clearly came from Emperor Jiawen's body. This meant that he was different from Situ Xingqian, who kept absorbing strength to break through. He was clearly hiding his true strength. But now he was finally able to display his true strength. Someone suddenly asked, "What's the third prince's matter? Where's the third prince?" The crowd was suddenly jolted awake. Rong Jiu just went to find Emperor Jiawen. Who would have thought that things would take a 180-degree turn in such a short period of time? Rong Jiu was clearly at a disadvantage now. Even if he had outstanding battle achievements, he was definitely not a match for a rank 6 warrior. In actual fact, Rong Jiu was in a better state than the crowd had imagined, as he was only slightly injured. When he arrived outside Qinghe Hall, he coincidentally saw Emperor Jiawen cultivating. Just as he was about to enter, Emperor Jiawen rushed up to the sky and didn't even care about him. That minor injury was only caused by the shockwaves of energy. However, the shock in his heart was 10,000 times heavier than that. He looked up at Emperor Jiawen, whose abilities kept increasing, and tightly knitted his brows as many emotions flashed across his eyes. Shock, doubt, disbelief. After a while he suddenly laughed. Wei Lin, who was following closely behind, immediately asked, "Your Highness, are you all right?" Rong Jiu shook his head and laughed even louder, but there was no smile in his eyes. So this was his imperial father. It turned out that what he had seen all these years was just an illusion. He thought that he knew a lot about his father, but in the end he realized that he knew nothing at all. That man had become a completely different person. No, or rather, he was originally like that. After Emperor Jiawen appeared, the red-tailed flood dragon seemed to become even more anxious and uneasy. It seemed like it wanted to go forward, but it was always hesitant as it looked at Emperor Jiawen with a complicated gaze. Chu Luiyue glanced at it, patted Shui, and softly asked, "Why? Why do I feel that the red-tailed flood dragon seems to hate Emperor Jiawen? But at the same time it's a little fearful?" Shui rubbed its head against Chu Luiyue's palm and softly whimpered to express its affirmation. Dumpling nodded even more crazily. "It's so obvious. The red-tailed flood dragon clearly wants to get rid of Emperor Jiawen completely. But for some reason it didn't do anything. Chu Luiyue was even more confused. This deep Xin formation is country Yao Chen's palace's defensive formation, and the red-tailed flood dragon is suppressed under it. Logically speaking, it should be on the same side as country Yao Chen's royal family. Where did this inexplicable disgust and hatred come from? It can't be because it supported Rongjiu's ascension. That has nothing to do with it. At this point, the seal above Emperor Jiawen's head completely disappeared. Emperor Jiawen's violent aura surged. Dark clouds gathered and thunder rumbled. The wind howled. This is the sign of a breakthrough. Chu Luiyue held his breath. Emperor Jiawen is actually going to directly break through and become a stage 7 warrior? Long. Following this loud sound, a silver ray of light suddenly descended from the sky. The dark sky was much brighter because of this ray of light. Then a second ray of light and a third ray of light appeared. It was as if there was a silver waterfall falling from the clouds. A gigantic canopy emitted a dazzling light. A vast suppression descended. Some people couldn't take it anymore and knelt down as they watched this scene agitatedly. Chu Luiyue slowly clenched his fists, and he almost couldn't believe what was happening in front of him. Emperor Jiawen actually summoned Heaven's Canopy. This is the sign that he's about to break through and become a stage 7 warrior. But looking at Emperor Jiawen's expression, he didn't seem surprised at all. It was as if he had long expected all of this. Under countless gazes, Emperor Jiawen slowly raised his hand and reached for Heaven's Canopy. Hold on. A low and lazy voice suddenly sounded. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 462. Emperor Jiawen suddenly paused in his actions, and he abruptly turned around. A tall figure appeared in front of the crowd. He slowly walked over with a casual smile on his devilish face. His eyes were as deep and pure as the night sky, and he was surrounded by an indescribable aura as if he didn't belong to this world. It was Rongxiu. Chu Luiyue widened her eyes slightly. This was because the aura on Rongxiu's body became stronger with every step he took. Upon seeing this scene, the crowd gasped in shock. That's Prince Li? Isn't Prince Li weak and sick all year round? Now he actually broke through to become a stage 3 warrior. No. He's a stage 4 warrior now. In the face of this sudden change, almost everyone was stunned on the spot. But Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Is Rongxiu planning to show his true abilities? Why? Emperor Jiawen stared closely at Rongxiu and his face changed a few times. You're not sick. But Rongxiu didn't immediately answer his question. Instead he walked straight to Chu Luiyue and stood still. He looked down, held her hand, and gently slid his fingers across her broken wrist. A warm and strong force instantly entered her body. Your Highness, actually, you don't have to worry about... Chu Luiyue originally wanted to say that he didn't have to worry about this injury since she was a celestial physician herself. She had already treated it briefly before, and it would heal on its own after some time. But when she met Rongxiu's deep and gentle gaze, her heart warmed and she swallowed her words. Sorry I'm late. Chu Luiyue lightly shook her head. Chi Han, who was hiding in the dark, looked even colder. Leave the rest to me. Upon hearing Rongxiu's words, Chu Luiyue felt a little uneasy. What are you planning to do? He had painstakingly hidden it for so many years, so why did he have to reveal it all today? Rongxiu's thin lips curved slightly. I'm just putting an end to it. Chu Luiyue's heart tingled as he instinctively looked up at Emperor Jiawen, who was in midair. A moment later, she gently held his hand. All right. While the two of them were talking, Rongxiu's aura had already broken through to a stage 5 warrior. After confirming that Chu Luiyue was fine, Rongxiu turned around to look at Emperor Jiawen. At this point, if Emperor Jiawen still couldn't tell what was going on, he would have wasted his many years on the throne. Rongxiu, you were lying to me all this time? Not only was he not sick, but his cultivation was also extremely outstanding. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have reached this level at his current age. No. Rongxiu did not seem to have stopped. He was about to break through the middle stage of the 5th stage. Rongxiu smiled lightly. I'm just learning from you, father. Haven't you been like this for so many years? Emperor Jiawen was dazed. Then he suddenly realized something as shock flashed across his eyes. Why, you already knew? Rongxiu smiled and didn't say anything, clearly admitting to it. Emperor Jiawen was instantly flustered, and his aura was messy. Even the heaven's canopy in front of him became a little illusory. Since when? What else do you know? Emperor Jiawen's face had a rare look of panic and nervousness. Chu Luiyue squinted his eyes. She had never seen such an expression on Emperor Jiawen's face before. It was as if a secret that had been hidden for many years had suddenly been discovered. It was reasonable for him to be shocked. When the surrounding people saw the current Rongxiu, they also had the same reaction. But where did this nervousness and panic come from? Mother has already passed away for many years. Father, you really don't have to be so worried. Rongxiu's tone was calm as if he were talking about someone else's matters. Emperor Jiawen felt as if he was struck by lightning. Rongxiu must have known everything. The anger from being lied to previously suddenly disappeared, and guilt and hatred rapidly surged in Emperor Jiawen's heart. Rongxiu, what happened back then wasn't what you think it was. I had my reasons back then. It seemed like he wanted to explain himself. However, Rongxiu wasn't interested in listening. He still smiled gently and lazily, but his eyes seemed to be frozen with a thick layer of ice. The past is the past. If you say this now, Mother won't be able to hear it. As for me, I'm just here today to fulfill Mother's last wish. As he spoke, his cold gaze landed on the item hanging around Emperor Jiawen's neck, and he smiled meaningfully. You still used this item in the end, didn't you? Emperor Jiawen's face quickly darkened. He seemed to have instantly aged by more than 10 years. No, I was forced to. He clenched his fists and his face was filled with conflict and pain. First it was the Empress, then it was Rongjiu. Everyone is betraying me. If I don't retaliate, I'll be completely trapped in this palace. My years of hard work will go to waste. How can I accept this? If these people didn't force me to this step, why would I do this? Slight mockery flashed across Rongxiu's face. Some people are always the best at finding excuses for themselves. Emperor Jiawen suddenly thought of something and hurriedly asked, "What did you just say?" "You just said that you want to help her fulfill her last wish. What is it?" "If I can help, I'll definitely do my best." "Father, are you serious?" Rongxiu raised his brows as if he were wavering. Emperor Jiawen harshly nodded. "I'm the one who let her down. I can make it up to her. Mother said that she doesn't want to see you step into heaven's canopy. Especially with her power." Rongxiu's gaze was cold as he said every word clearly. "She wants you to stay here forever and you can't leave even if you die." Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios mobile users, please browse and read. The so-called good was built on the basis that Rongxiu wouldn't pose any threat to him. Just like how he always said how much he loved his mother, wasn't he the one who hurt her the most in the end and even caused her to die of depression? To Rongxiu, Emperor Jiawen's words were a joke. Seeing Rongxiu's penetrating gaze, Emperor Jiawen swallowed his words of defense. Finally, all the emotions on his face disappeared, and only coldness was left. "If you want to stop me, we'll have to see if you have the ability." Then he started to absorb the surrounding heaven and earth force again. The seal had already disappeared and all the energy in his body had already flowed out. As long as he broke through the last stage 7 warrior barrier, he could successfully enter heaven's canopy. Rongxiu raised his hand. Buzz! The sound of a sword rang. The silver long sword that was previously stabbed into the ground quickly flew over and landed in his hands. He crossed his legs and tightly held the sword with both hands as he stared closely at Emperor Jiawen. Sword up. Sword down. An incomparably tyrannical sword chi swept across. The jade slabs on the ground shattered and flew up into the air. Then they silently turned into powder in the terrifying sword aura. When Emperor Jiawen saw Rongxiu attack, he already felt that something was amiss. When he saw the sword aura coming straight for him, his heart skipped a beat. Rongxiu's abilities have actually reached that of a stage 6 warrior. When a cultivator was breaking through, they usually needed to focus. The higher their cultivation level, the more so. Emperor Jiawen originally wanted to set up a barrier to block all attacks. But once Rongxiu attacked, he knew that he couldn't do it. Helplessly, he could only temporarily stop and turn around to receive Rongxiu's attack. Mountain and river fall. A blue origin power gushed out from his palm. Then it was the second and third force. The force that surged out was like a stream that quickly merged together and became a raging river. Vaguely, one could even hear the sound of the water flowing. That river-like origin power poured down in torrents. The sharp sword aura immediately arrived. The two forces harshly clashed against each other. In an instant, the sword aura entered the river and water splashed everywhere. Emperor Jiawen secretly heaved a sigh of relief. But the next moment he saw that the blue river suddenly split in the middle. It completely split into two. Emperor Jiawen's expression froze. The sword aura's attack didn't seem to weaken at all. The force contained in the sword aura was even stronger than expected. Then the sword aura went against the flow. The strong aura made Emperor Jiawen's entire body tense up. Wah! His force was completely pierced through. That sword aura went straight for his face. He went on his toes and rapidly retreated. But at this moment, he suddenly felt a biting cold wind coming from behind him. Without thinking, he dodged to the side. He hurriedly looked over and realized that the one attacking him was actually the red-tailed flood dragon. When the red-tailed flood dragon didn't hit its target, it became even more irritable. Half of the sky reverberated with its low and forceful roar. The spectators on the ground were also affected by the strong suppression, and their expressions changed. Those who weren't strong enough even directly vomited blood. However, that suppression didn't land on Chu Luiyue. There seemed to be an invisible barrier that blocked the red-tailed flood dragon's suppression. Chu Luiyue surveyed her surroundings and blinked. So many people were affected, but why wasn't she affected? Then her gaze landed on Xue Xue. I'm a legendary fiend. What's a mere red-tailed flood dragon to me? The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice suddenly sounded. Chu Luiyue was enlightened. She had forgotten about this. The legendary three-eyed eagle was in my dantian. Even though outsiders didn't know about it, fiends were very sensitive to such things. That red-tailed flood dragon is the fiend guarding country Yao Chen's palace. Why would it attack Emperor Jiawen? Chu Luiyue softly muttered. Just as she was secretly confused, that sword aura had already landed on Emperor Jiawen. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from IUN. So that was the case. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. Then he carefully sized up Rong Xiu and sighed in his heart. I never asked Rong Xiu why he purposely pretended to be sick. Previously, I always thought that he did it for the throne, but I didn't expect him to do it for the person sitting on the throne. He schemed for so many years just to deal with Emperor Jiawen. Just as she was about to say something, she suddenly felt a gaze coming from the side. She turned around to look. Rong Jiu looked at Rong Xiu with a complicated expression. He was not stupid. After so many things had happened, he had more or less guessed it. Seventh brother, I have something to talk to you about in private. I wonder if you have time now? Rong Xiu lightly smiled and nodded. Okay. Outside Taihe Palace, Chu Luiyue and Elder Yi were talking. Mentor, don't worry. These are all small injuries. They'll heal after some time. Chu Luiyue looked at Elder Yi in front of him, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Ever since Rong Xiu and Rong Jiu entered Taihe Palace to discuss, Elder Yi kept asking her questions, afraid that there was something wrong with her body. Didn't you already take my pulse? Don't you even trust yourself? Elder Yi coughed. I'm just worried about you. Thinking about everything that happened previously, he still felt a little scared. If it weren't for my disciple being outstanding and strong enough, it would have been really dangerous. Chu Luiyue decisively changed the topic. Elder Zhongyi has already left? Elder Yi sneered. Situ Xingqian is already dead. Why is he still here? If he continues, he'll be the next to die. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment. Elder Zhongyi seems to be a very vengeful person. What happened today? Haha, that fellow has always been like this. However, he doesn't dare to leak this news to Mingyue Tianshan. If not, even he will have to bear the consequences. Even though Zhongyi is a stage 6 warrior, he doesn't dare to mess around. Chu Luiyue didn't say anything. Elder Zhongyi has a very good relationship with Situ Xingqian. If not, he wouldn't have spent so much effort to save her personally. Now that he personally saw Situ Xingqian die in front of him, she felt that he wouldn't take it lying down. Also, country Xing Luo's Situ Xingqian is the eldest princess after all. Situ Yin dotes on his daughter a lot. In his anger, he might do something. Elder Yi waved his hand. Don't worry. Situ Yin won't dare to mess around. Situ Xingqian swallowed the energy in the bronze cauldron to increase her abilities and even tried to kill you. She was in the wrong first. Furthermore, she was taken over later on. At that moment, she was already dead. In the end, she reaped what she sowed. Everyone could see it clearly. How could Situ Yin still have the face to mention this? No matter how much he likes Situ Xingqian, he can't give up the entire country Xing Luo for her. Hence, in the end, everything can only be reduced to nothing. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly and looked at the tightly locked door. I wonder how their discussion went. Emperor Jiawen had already been locked up, and the red-tailed flood dragon was suppressed in the deep Shen formation again. The mess from before was more or less cleaned up by now. On the surface, everything seemed to be gradually returning to normal. But, Everyone knew that the outcome was still in the hands of the two of them. Elder Yi followed his line of sight and let out a long sigh. I didn't expect that after so many years it's still, Chu Luiyue suddenly asked. Emperor Jiawen? Master, did you already know that His Majesty? Elder Yi hesitated for a moment, nodded, and then shook his head. I only knew that His Majesty and Ryue had a falling out back then because he did something wrong to her, but I didn't know why he did it. Who can he blame for ending up in this state? Chu Luiyue thought for a while and asked, did Emperor Jiawen come from country Xingluo? Consort Wan came from heaven's canopy? Elder Yi paused for a moment and smiled bitterly. I'm not sure about this. His Majesty met her by chance when he went out. He only said that she was the orphan of a fallen family, but nobody knows the details. Back then she was doted on, and quite a few people secretly investigated her background, but they didn't find anything. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. If that was the case it would make sense. Crick. Taiha Palace's door suddenly opened. Mobile users please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 465. Chu Luiyue and Elder Yi looked up at the same time. Not far behind the two of them, the various family heads were all quiet as they looked over. A figure walked out of it. Within a night, country Yao Chen had a shocking change. First, Rongjiu rebelled, occupied the imperial city, and forced the emperor to abdicate. Then, country Xingluo's eldest princess, Situ Xingqian, swallowed a strange force and continuously broke through. She tried to kill Chu Luiyue but she was eventually killed. Finally, Prince Li Rongxiu fought with Emperor Jiawen to take back his birth mother, concubine Wan, and won with one strike. Too many things happened on this day and they quickly spread throughout the entire imperial city. Nobody thought of keeping the news a secret. In fact, with such a big commotion, it was simply impossible to pretend that nothing had happened. Besides, the fight for the throne had huge implications. All the family heads personally saw everything that happened, so they would definitely tell their family members so that they would know how to deal with the situation. At that moment, everyone in the imperial city was talking about this. Very quickly the latest news came. The third prince, Rongjiu, ascended the throne and Prince Li Rongxiu chose to return to Mingyue Tianshan. As for Emperor Jiawen, he was sent to Qingyi Palace to live out his remaining years as the Emperor Emeritus. Everyone had different opinions about this result. After all, everyone already knew that Rongxiu wasn't really sick. On the contrary, he was very talented in cultivation and he was very capable. Previously, many people guessed that he and Rongjiu would fight for the throne. They didn't expect him to return to Mingyue Tianshan. As for Emperor Jiawen, what kind of ending would he have after being forcefully chased down from the throne? However, after Situ Xingqian died, country Xingluo didn't have any reaction as if they had directly ignored it. Princely Mansion Bamboo Forest. Chu Luiyue and Rongxiu sat opposite each other with a half-finished chessboard in between them. The wind blew and the bamboo leaves rustled. Rongxiu put down the chess piece in his hand. Do you think that I'm too unreasonable? Chu Luiyue looked up and asked in shock. Your Highness, why do you say that? Rongxiu paused for a while. Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. Is he talking about Emperor Jiawen? Your Highness naturally has your own difficulties and reasons for doing so. Chu Luiyue shook his head gently. As long as your Highness thinks it's right, then it's right. Rongxiu's thin lips slightly raised. He suddenly leaned closer, fixed his eyes on her, and asked jokingly, Your meaning is that no matter what this prince does, you will stand by this prince's side? His voice was low and lazy, and there was a careless smile at the corner of his mouth. Of course. Chu Luiyue looked into his deep eyes and said firmly. Her expression was so serious and sincere. Rongxiu's heart seemed to be hit by something, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. Your Highness is mine. I will naturally protect your Highness. Chu Luiyue smiled, and her eyes curved as if she was joking. However, the gaze in her eyes was firm and unquestionable. Rongxiu knew that she meant what she said. He kept quiet for a while and suddenly said, Actually, this isn't quite accurate. What? Chu Luiyue was dazed. Rongxiu's long fingers lightly tapped on the chessboard as if he was smiling. I'm not considered your man yet. His voice was exceptionally low, and his last syllable was slightly dragged out. When it landed in her ears, it was as if something was lightly scratching her heart. Chu Luiyue suddenly reacted and couldn't help but curse in her heart. Demon. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you, Your Highness. I'm going to the Tianling dynasty now, and you're also going back to Mingyue Tianshan. I'm afraid we won't be able to see each other for a while. Rongxiu raised his brows slightly. It seems like you're in a hurry. Chu Liwei said faintly, you can't be in a hurry. You've already prepared everything for the wedding. At this point, Rong Xiu felt a little regretful. I've indeed planned to get married long ago, but too many things happened in between. I didn't expect it to be delayed until now. Now, both of them had things to do, so they definitely wouldn't be able to get married in time. Seeing that Rong Xiu seemed to be really disappointed, Chu Liue's heart skipped a beat. In any case, there's an engagement. It doesn't make much of a difference whether we get married earlier or later, right? Rong Xiu looked at her meaningfully and smiled faintly. Of course there's a difference. I've been waiting for too long. A trace of doubt flashed across Chu Liue's heart. It had only been a few months since they first met. Why did Rong Xiu sound like he had been waiting for a long time? But as long as it's you, I can keep waiting. Sensing Rong Xiu's deep and gentle gaze, Chu Liue sighed softly. Actually, the road ahead was full of dangers and difficulties. She didn't know when she would see him again. Your Highness, are you really going back to Mingyue Tianshan? The matters in the imperial capital have already been settled. There's no need to continue staying. Then let's get married when I return from the Tianling dynasty. How about it? Rong Xiu's expression turned serious. After a moment, he bent down and kissed Chu Liue's forehead. Okay. His voice was light, but it contained too much. Patience, tolerance, waiting, love, and trust. Chu Liue lowered her eyes and thought for a long time. Finally, she seemed to have made up her mind. Your Highness, I have something to tell you. Rong Xiu nodded and pretended to listen. Chu Liue's lips were tightly pursed. She looked into Rong Xiu's eyes and said word by word, I'm going to the Tianling dynasty this time. The date of my return is not set. My enemy is there. Digression. Kavinka is dead. 4 updates today, 6 updates tomorrow. Happy 520 mobile users. Please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.